Wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot!
All right, let's get it going on this Monday. Hanging out with you for the next 3 hours. I don't think my mic is on, young Vince. Don't believe that's the case.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. Try again. Try another mic. Oh, there you go. There we go. Was it the Finchmeister or was he American Pie? Was that who it was?
Yeah. No, then the Shermanator, yeah.
The Shermanator, is that what it was? All right, we got you here for the next 3 hours here on The Fan, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. That's the voice of Mark Dykton over there because Kevin Bowen is golfing in Chattanooga. Is that what he's doing right now?
Slicing into the woods.
He's slicing.
Of the Tennessee wilderness.
35 degrees. He's out there bundled up. What does he have? Some hot tea out there. So he's out there. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm Andy Sweeney. We got you for the next 3 hours here on the Wake Up Call. You know, boy, there are days. Mark and I were laughing about it last night, and then obviously this morning getting ready for the show. And we got a ton of sound to play today. Nate Atkins going to join us bottom of the 8 o'clock hour, about 8:30 or so. I mean, is there enough to talk about today? And what's funny on this opening segment is, you know, we try to hit on just a little bit of everything. And boy, tons and tons of items to discuss today.
Just a little bit.
NFL free agency. I mean, we saw last night, thank God that he's off the board. I am so tired, and I understand it. Just ESPN's going to be talking so much today about, if you're waking up, Russell Wilson is set to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Whatever is left of Russell Wilson, and I'm not sure there's very much left with Russell Wilson, but you get him for free. So that is one of the big moves. Chris Jones signing back with the Kansas City Chiefs. So there are 3 or 4 moves, re-ups, if you will, contracts, if you will, things that happen this weekend that we'll dive into. So NFL free agency, that tampering period technically begins at noon. We'll dive into that. I happen to think it's more interesting, you know, unless Ballard takes a big swing somewhere, it's going to be interesting, these secondary guys. You look at Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart. Who else could be interested in those guys? So we'll talk about that as we go this morning. Again, Nate Atkins will join us at 9:30. And then
8:30.
Right, 8:30. And then it's basketball mania. I mean, listen, yesterday you had Purdue outlast Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin lost, what, it was like 7 out of 9? Wisconsin stinks, but still, Purdue does their business. He gets his number 15 in the rafters immediately. I got some thoughts on that. Indiana has won their 4th in a row. Mike Woodson, snippy again in the post-game press conference with, I don't have to sit up here and talk about my job. We can dive into that. And then last night, you know, it's funny, Mark, it happened again. It's what, 12-5? You're like
Man.
5-6 minutes into the game, and you get the angry Rick Carlisle timeout. The difference is energy and defensive energy, I thought was key last night, especially early on, as the Pacers could not buy a bucket from 3, especially, but they come back and a dominating performance there in the second half. 39-21 there in that third quarter, outscoring the Orlando Magic by 18. They got a little bit of help. I know Sixers beat the Knicks, and that's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. You had the Miami Heat lose. And of course, the news that we did not get to talk about on Friday. When did this become official? Was it Saturday, the Benedict Mathurin stuff?
Yeah,
or was
Saturday
it later?
afternoon.
Or was it, I was going to say it was either Saturday or Friday night, because I don't remember like any of our shows talking about it. And then JMV was there, front row, feet on the court, to watch Indiana State. What I think is their season now will go to the NIT. I do not believe they will be. That's not me wishing. It's me thinking they will not be an NCAA tournament team. Marky D, how you feeling this morning? Mark didn't sleep much last night.
Oh, my God. I could not sleep a wink. It's the stupid daylight. Spring ahead or whatever it was.
Is that bad for kids? Like waking up Monday morning for school?
We'll find out. I'm sure my wife will text me later. Like, it's been hell. I'm like, yeah, I bet. I didn't get any sleep.
Oh, goodness.
No, the Pacers stuff, it was good to see because after you saw the Benedict Mathurin news, you're like, that's a blow, man. Like, you can say he's been inconsistent and everything, but that scoring,
it's a huge deal.
That attitude he's got, the energy he brings off the bench, you lost all that, and it was nice to get to see them get a nice big win against an Eastern Conference team that's doing really well this year. They moved up in the standings a bit and everything like that, and they came back from another very slow start. That is really started to concern me, these slow starts that they keep getting off to on pretty much a game-by-game basis.
It should bother you, yeah.
But the fact that they overcame it again and pulled out a win is good to see, especially after a disappointing loss to the Timberwolves earlier this weekend.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be a busy show. I think for me, let's just run down these real quick, okay, here, and interject. NFL free agency, Colts free agency. The question will be this morning as we wake up, the question will be, what is Chris Ballard going to do? I want to talk about this more in the 7:30 segment. There was an ESPN.com article, like Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler and these guys. I mean, it's pages long, and they're going through, where all these different players may go, kind of the tiers, what teams may be more active than other teams. And kind of buried in one of the paragraphs was the thought process that Chris Ballard potentially on, you look at a guy like Daniel Hunter, who's the edge rusher the last couple years for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just using him as an example. But some of these defensive linemen potentially are guys that in free agency the Colts might look after. They put in their article, their rundown. The only Colts thing I could find was, hey, the Colts could be looking at defensive linemen here in free agency. And it goes back to something that Bowen talked about within the last, couple weeks, I would say, since we had Ballard, the week and a half since we had Chris Ballard. And that is, what is different here if potentially for the first time, not from fans, but for someone above him, if Chris Ballard is feeling heat at all, how that changes free agency. The thing that I am interested in here in the next several hours for the Colts specifically, and the NFL is good. I mean, you saw Jerry Jeudy get traded, and I saw Colts fans react to Jerry Jeudy getting traded to the Cleveland Browns, and I'm like, Jerry Jeudy stinks. So, I mean, if you wanted to bring in a stinky wide receiver and hope that guy was going to do something, so be it. But that
reminded me of the Amari Cooper thing, because Amari Cooper got traded to the Browns.
But he was
the same
good.
Thing. People are like,
yeah,
what? You could have gotten Amari Cooper for like a third-round pick? I'm like,
we'll see if he turns into Amari Cooper. But Jerry Jeudy, he ain't lining up. This ain't South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Okay, he's not at Alabama any longer, and so I am interested here today, tomorrow. Yes, we are interested in the first wave. If there is a sizable swing from Chris Ballard, I think also you're interested in the next group of guys, right? The day 2, 3, and 4 guys that don't headline any free agent class, but guys that present value, guys, the type of guys that we've seen Ballard have success with before. And then most importantly for me, it's how these guys, Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore, Julian Blackmon, those 3, and probably maybe even more so than Blackmon, how Moore and Grover Stewart, if their names come up with any other team, that's the big unknown here, is we don't know who else around the NFL is going to value their services. And there are going to be teams that will value their services. So free agency, maybe not as much today, at least for us being off the air at 10 o'clock, but that's going to be, Mark, one of the big conversation pieces Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday around here on The Fan.
Yeah, and if there's anything that comes over the news, we'll let you know. We also have to be aware that, this is my annual reminder, be aware of fake Twitter accounts.
The fake Schefter.
The Schefters with like an O, a zero and everything in there.
The Ad Darden Schefter about 5 years ago got everybody.
I got before by that too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
With the R in the end, it looks like an M.
The Ian Rappaport with an ampersand or something.
My dream for today would be for Nathaniel Finch to throw us, young Nathaniel, hey guys, there's breaking news in the NFL world, like substantial breaking news, even Colts news, and have us run with it and have it be Ed Schefter. That would be
it could happen. You never know.
It would be a dream. So yes,
one defensive lineman, by the way, if Ballard is going to be looking in that market that did get released. Eric Armstead from the 49ers. That's a name to keep an eye on.
He got
He's
released.
He's a little older,
okay.
but yeah, they
that.
failed to restructure his deal, so he is released. So that's kind of a big name guy that it's hitting the market in the final hours before the legal tampering starts. So that's one to keep an eye on, I would say.
There's one to keep an eye on. So we're keeping an eye. Yes, if anything comes across the ticker, we'll throw it your way. Now,
as real or fake as possible.
The other thing is, and we'll get to a bunch of college basketball. Again, Purdue just, it's all about, I don't even know how much with Purdue it's about the Big Ten tournament. I did love, we cut this out, Matt Painter's like, yeah, it'd be pretty cool if we won the Big Ten tournament. I'm thinking Matt Painter wishes he could fast forward right through the Big Ten tournament in Minneapolis, and he could be here, Selection Sunday, 6 days away, that he could be at his site, right, getting ready to play. His site's going to be here in Indianapolis. I had someone reach out on Twitter. It's like, I don't care what they do in the Big Ten. I just want them to play in Indy. I'm like, brother, they've had Indy locked up to play in the first and second rounds since about November, okay? Since December 30th, okay? They've had that locked in. So, yeah, we'll get to Purdue and Indiana. I do love Mike Woodson. Just so mad about being asked about his job and just the entitlement from Mike Woodson, who has accomplished little in now 3 years, but they've won 4 in a row. So we got to dive into him. Now, quickly with the Pacers. Last night, they get down, and it's only a 6-point game at the end of the first quarter, but it looks ugly, right? And this is piggybacked. Boy, it's piggybacked with the news of Benedict Mathurin.
Mm-hmm.
And, we leave here on Friday, and, we probably didn't talk about it enough, Mark. Probably if I went back to Friday's show and I said maybe what's something that needed just a little bit more time, if we were evaluating ourselves, I do feel like probably, we left on Friday knowing that Mathurin would be out the next 4 games, right? He was set to miss, anyway, he was set to miss the Magic, Thunder, Bulls, and Nets the next 4 games. And then he was going, and listen, you hate this. We had this with the Halliburton injury. And then he was going to be reevaluated. Oh, yeah. And that's never a good thing because that's not a 4-game injury, 5-game injury. That is something that is going to take some time, and then you have to bring him back slowly, and then you got to ramp him up, and then you look at it, you probably add another 5 games. I mean, you're looking at an 8, 10, 12 game, that he was going to miss. In my mind, that's where it went. And now with the shoulder surgery is going to be done for the year. Coming up at 8 o'clock, I want to dive into what exactly was accomplished with Benedict Mathurin because I don't know, and KB will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure how he feels. I have very mixed feelings on what was accomplished this year, and we hope to have Rick Carlisle on tomorrow. I'm sure he'll talk about it. But
I'm assuming Kevin had a vigil outside the Tennessee cabin he stayed at when the news broke, and he had like
four degrees
taps into the mountains.
He played 36 holes. It was 14 degrees out in rainy. But here's the thing, and I mean this with the Pacers. This is obviously just a massive hit. It's a massive hit losing Benedict Mathurin for a number of reasons. A, he's a good young player of yours that you need. It's a little bit like Anthony Richardson. If this team goes and they make the playoffs, and whether that's the play-in, the play-in, and they move on from the play-in to the real playoffs, if you will, you want your young guys who are, they've made it very clear, we're not trading Benedict Mathurin. They wanted to protect this guy. And now as you take the next step as a franchise, he's not going to be there this year. And then it's the injury itself, and then it's the reality of, and here's kind of where I am. I'm very torn on the Pacers. I don't know what the hell's going to happen to them the rest of these 17, 18 games. Mark, I have no idea.
No.
You're watching that first quarter. You're thinking they're falling apart. You're watching the Orlando game last night. You're like, we're going to be swept by Orlando, and we're just gonna kind of limp home type of thing.
Yeah.
That's what you think when you're watching that first quarter, and then they come back, and the reality is that guys like T.J. McConnell and Ben Shepherd and all these guys who at many times this year have not played. There are games that T.J. McConnell has played either none or very little, and now you got to think he's almost 20 minutes a game. And the reality is as well that Benedict Mathurin was a guy that in any of these situations, you can kind of say, bleep the offense, I'll go get you a bucket. And there's only a few guys that can do that on the Pacer team, and he was one of them, and he was definitely one of them when you brought in that second unit. And so him being out, is it a, they call it a death nail. Isn't that what they call it? Is it that? I'm not sure it's that, but their ceiling went down over the weekend when the Benedict Mathurin news came out. That doesn't mean they can't finish in the top 6. It doesn't mean they can't win if they do get into the play-in, the play-in rounds, if you will. It doesn't mean they can't be right there in that first round competing with somebody. But you can only take so many hits. And when you move Buddy Hield, which I was fine with, when you move a guy like Buddy Hield and Doug McDermott comes back and is a 0, that's what Doug McDermott has been with this friend. He hasn't done anything, okay? I have no idea when he's going to get back. Your margin for error starts to go away a little bit, and I think you saw that with the Benedict Mathurin news. On the flip side, it was an impressive win last night, and with the Heat losing, the Heat lost to someone. They lost to the Wizards at home, I think, last night. The Pacers wake up today, not the 8. They wake up the 7, a half game behind Philly for the 6. And I think that would be my only other thing, Mark, is Mathurin or not, whether he was injured or not, regardless of who is on the team right now, there is just an absolute opportunity here. Yeah. With the teams in front of you being injured and not playing great basketball themselves.
You've got plenty of guys that need to step up in this absence of Mathurin and everything like that. And I just think it was one of those things where you've had the Hield trade that they haven't been able to fill his scoring since. The defense is still awful as it's been. They still get off to slow starts. Now you have the Mathurin injury. While they got the win last night, and I was very happy they got the win, it's one of those things where it's like, how much more can they sustain before they break? Because it's getting to that point where you were right. There's only so much a team can take before the wheels fall off, and I feel like the Mathurin news over the weekend.
I thought that might be it.
I thought that could be it too. The fact that they got the win yesterday was huge for them. It's still one of those things where it's like I don't know how much more can they sustain before eventually it's like, yeah, guys, we can't do this anymore. We can't sustain any more shots to the arm. So,
no, I mean they really can't. So
they're on the verge of they're still in the playoff race because the East is not that great, but it's one of those things where it's like my level of confidence in their playoff run has gone down drastically. And the Mathurin news has not helped that, I would say, despite the win last night.
By the way, in the last several hours also, just going back to NFL free agency, the thought process is that Kirk Cousins is going to land in Atlanta. So I don't know who cares about that.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to care.
I mean,
about
Justin
Kirk
Fields,
Cousins.
I don't know where he's going. If Kirk Cousins goes to the Falcons, I don't know what's happening.
People don't want Justin Fields.
Well,
maybe that's it. Maybe they don't want Justin Fields.
Well, you saw Mac Jones has gotten shipped off and everything like that. So that draft class is looking like they're going to be on different teams all over the place.
We got to take a break here, but let me go back. I did look that. You ready for this? The first-round quarterbacks taken in that 2021 draft. Trevor Lawrence, okay. Has he worked? Is he the stud of all studs? He's good.
He's fine.
He's above average for sure. You had Zach Wilson at 2.
Woof.
You had Trey Lance at 3.
Woof.
You had Justin Fields at 11. You had Mac Jones at 15. 2 of those guys have already been traded, and Justin Fields is going to be traded. 3 of the 5 are going to be traded, and Zach Wilson is either going to be traded for peanuts or he's going to be released, and he'll go to the CFL. So that's where we are. That's where we are this morning. Purdue, Indiana. We have a check down coming up. Nate Atkins. So we're busy today. We got you. We're hanging out with you till 10 o'clock here. It's a wake-up call. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Your home for Indy sports. Now with even more ways to
What happened to our we had uplifting music there from Nathaniel Finch? It was like a revival there, Mark. For
I started
30
waking
seconds.
up on this Monday morning with my lack of sleep.
Did you get any sleep last night?
Not much, no.
Oh, man, let's get it going. All right, so tons to do here on the morning check down. Pacers winners last night. Boy, what a third quarter from them. 111-97. That's your final. Nathaniel, you ready to go to these sound? You ready to go here? Here's Rick Carlisle. Big games the rest of the way for his squad.
Look, these are all playoff games. You know, you need your best competitors in the game as early as possible. And, you know, as much as it's important to watch everyone's minutes that they don't go crazy. I mean, TJ only played 11 minutes the other night against Minnesota, and we needed him tonight. And actually, truthfully, it was hard getting him out of the game. You know, he was playing so well. So I'm a big believer in involving the bench early. You know, and we needed everyone tonight.
Yeah, 6 guys scoring in double figures last night. Obi Toppin had 17. He mentioned T.J. McConnell. McConnell, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists in 27 minutes. Came in, made shots immediately, did T.J. McConnell, so he was really good last night. I thought Halliburton was much better. Thought Siakam had a nice game as well. So the Pacers, winners again, 111-97. Up next for the Pacers, on the road at the Thunder, who are really good, obviously. The OKC Thunder, they're shooting to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. You'll catch that game tomorrow, 8 o'clock, 7:30 our coverage beginning here on the Fan.
That was efforts by like Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell that you need for the Pacers, especially
the
with
rest of the
Mathurin out.
way.
Yeah, you need those kind of efforts to come off the bench.
Yeah,
night in and night
Obi
out.
Toppin's not going to be able to have games where he has 4 points. And
No.
TJ McConnell's not going to be able to have a game now where he has 6 points. Those guys are going to have to come in. They're going to have to play more than 17, 18 minutes, and they're going to have to score. It's just the way it is.
On the college floor, we had Indiana edged Michigan State 65-64 yesterday. We had Khalil Ware, 28 points, 12
Boy, he was
rebounds.
good.
That was very solid by them. They also got some good news as well over the weekend. Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal returning for 5th seasons for Indiana, which
Okay.
that's good considering they lost a 5-star.
Okay.
Maybe that calms the palpitations of an IU fan base. I don't know.
I don't
No?
think so. Well, Galloway's only interesting because there were thoughts that Galloway, let me put it this way. Move Anthony Leal aside. I'm not going to denounce Anthony Leal. I don't think that does anything for the Indiana fan. But Trey Galloway, there were Purdue rumors, there were other rumors of Trey Galloway. If he put his name in the portal having 1 year of eligibility, someone would absolutely want him. Like, he would get scooped up pretty quick, I would imagine, on the open market. But he's back, so good for him.
Yeah, now they just need to fill out the rest of that scholarship roster that they don't have.
Yeah, good for him.
We'll see.
Give us a swoosh. Purdue winners 78-70. Senior night, you saw Zach Edey going to the rafters. I want to dive into that here.
Not literally. His jersey
just his jersey. His number
He
50.
didn't ascend to the heavens.
I do like that Purdue doesn't need to wait 42 years.
Right.
Like some schools would wait till Zach Edey would be 67 years old and a much older man.
Give a wave. He's hunched over.
Yeah, well, he's hunched over
He's
to
only
honor him.
6'11" at that point.
Yeah, that's a great point. So he was fantastic, obviously. You saw him have 25 and 14 in the win. Post-game, Matt Painter on the legacy of his big man.
I think Zach Edey's legacy is going to be, just through his development, his overall success, and the success of our program. Like, he's the most successful class we've had here. So it speaks volumes. He's got the most wins in the Big Ten the last 10 years. So I think sometimes that gets brushed to the side at Purdue. But it doesn't get brushed to the side by the people we compete against. They know. So I don't think we resonate with everybody nationally. I don't think we resonate with everybody within the Midwest, but we resonate with the people we compete against.
I got to be honest. I have no idea what Matt Painter's talking about there. I think Zach, am I wrong? I think Zach Edey resonates with everybody.
I would think so.
Where am I wrong on that? Purdue resonates with people. Purdue just needs to win in the NCAA tournament. Purdue needs to go to the Final Four. That's what they need to do.
They're going to be one of the darlings of the NCAA tournament when it gets started. And Edey is going to be one of the faces of the tournament as long as they don't get knocked out in the first round.
Oh, he's going to be the face. Yeah, everyone knows what it is with Purdue. You can win it. I think what he's trying to say is, we win a bunch of games. maybe we don't get talked about as much because, and I think that's because of the lack of, and I know it's a hot button topic, but some of the success in the NCAA tournament. Listen, people around here pay attention to college basketball, but the country starts to follow college basketball about 2 weeks ago. By the way, it's going to be a Friday Big Ten tournament against Minnesota, I believe, for Purdue. So there you go on that. Give us one more swoosh
IU's
here.
playing Michigan or Penn State on Thursday, by the way.
I just can't imagine.
That should be a fun one.
I just can't imagine caring about a game less than that right there. That is ugly. Lastly here, we got to get to Josh Schertz of Indiana State. Indiana State losers 84-80 in the conference there of the MVC. And what's sad about it is now 1-2 on the season against Drake. That would have been not only the automatic qualifier, it would have been a nice quad one win. You get the week off, then you're Indiana State, you're going into the NCAA tournament, but that's not the case. They were down by as many as 18 in this game. They're down by 13 at halftime. Here's Schertz post game on the loss.
We don't score, and then we had a kind of a breakdown defensively, and so Enright gets the three on a we just kind of lost vision, and so those things happen, but just too many mistakes for us against a really good team, against a team that good. You got to obviously play exceptionally hard, which we did, and you got to also play with intelligence and discipline. I thought we lacked a little bit of that on both ends of the floor tonight, for whatever reason.
You think they're done, right? You don't think they're getting in at all?
I don't think they're going to get in. I'll tell you why. Let's do that after the break. Indiana State, it's a tough sell for them to make the NCAA tournament. I want to dive into that. Josh Schertz as well is on a couple short lists. I know one school where he is on the short list of. We can dive into that a little bit more. Pacers, and then free agency. If I threw it your way, Colts fans, defensive back in free agency, defensive lineman in free agency, which way would you go? We'll talk about all of that. We got you to 10 o'clock. Nate Atkins joining in about an hour. It's the wake-up call here on The Fan on a Monday.
Coming up Monday on Query & Company, we'll recap Pacers.
Randy on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, so back at it here on this Monday. No KB today. Mark Dighton moves over 4 feet from behind the board.
You wear pants. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I never get to see your legs.
I do occasionally wear pants in the studio. It's very frowned upon by human resources, even though we're in sports talk radio, to not wear pants. Nathaniel Finch is producing today. I remember when I had Nathaniel Finch's hair back when I was 23, 24 years old. So I don't like looking at Nathaniel being so young and so
young
you
and
know.
svelte.
So yeah, exactly. You didn't drive up from New Albany today, did you? I don't believe Nathaniel.
Oh my God, he told me
on Friday. For people that don't know, Nathaniel got here like 7:15, and we're like, oh, why you late, man? He's like, well, I drove up from New Albany, from Southern Indiana. Guy drove 2 hours.
That's the biggest.
5 a.m.
That's the biggest no in my life. If I was him, I'm like, you want me to come in when?
Yeah.
What time?
We got you to 10 o'clock here on The Fan. Nate Atkins going to join us coming up at about 8:30, free agency. A couple things we want to clean up. We did not get to New Garden winning the first race there in St. Pete. The St. Pete commercial played right before we came back. It looked beautiful there, didn't it?
Well,
Jake Query working down there.
Of course it looked beautiful there.
85 degrees, everyone wearing their T-shirts in the sun. So, yeah, we'll talk some IndyCar probably a little bit more tomorrow as their season underway. So I'm excited, working in this market to kind of add something new to my sports calendar, if you will. And so throwing in IndyCar, I do need to find two things. A lot of people did this about a decade ago. A lot of Americans did this with soccer. Okay, Mark? So I know you don't care about soccer in this way.
I don't. I like soccer.
Yeah, but they would pick a team and they'd pick Manchester United.
Oh, yeah.
They'd pick, like Jimmy Cook. No offense. They'd pick whoever had Messi on the team. Well, I don't want to do that, okay? So I got to find someone who's good but up-and-comer. I need to find somebody. I text my guy, Andrew Chernoff, TV extraordinaire here in Indianapolis, and I go, is there a bad boy on the tour?
Oh.
He says there's not really a bad boy on the tour, and I don't like that. There's got to be a bad boy because whoever got in trouble the most, that's who I was going to take.
See, the way you look up teams is like my brothers and I would play FIFA and we do random teams. Like, I'll be Nottingham Woods or whatever they are. Sure,
whatever
I'll
the
be
hell
them.
they are. Yeah, exactly. So
I'll be Baron 1947, whatever that means.
Also, give us the contract details. I saw is it Ian Rappaport, I believe, and it was not a fake Ian Rappaport.
No,
it was
this is real.
It was a real Ian Rappaport reported on the final numbers for the Chiefs re-signing Chris Jones, which, by the way, A, they had to do, and B, it means L'Jarius Sneed, the corner there, is absolutely going to be traded. Now, I'm not saying it's the Colts, but he will be traded, you would imagine, in the next couple days.
Jimmy Cook, if he's up already doing naked cartwheels in his home, I'm assuming it says the final numbers on the Chiefs deal with Chris Jones, 5 years, $158.75 million in salary, including $101 million in guarantees. He gets a $30 million signing bonus the first 2 years guaranteed, and his 2026 base salary guaranteed in 2025.
Oh, good for him.
Averaging $31.75 million a year, the highest paid defensive tackle in the National Football League.
I did see his cap hit this year because they'll do a signing bonus. His cap hit this year for the Chiefs is going to be like $7 million, like $7.5 million, and then obviously it's going to go up to above 34 and then above 40 and everything else. But they've front-loaded some of that money there on the front end. So listen, I think he's worth it. I think you look at, I know people don't want to hear this, but you look at what he did in the Super Bowl. I know it's a lot for an interior defensive lineman. It's a lot for him and Mahomes and Kelsey. To me, it means Sneed. Someone's going to be the odd man out. But again, when you've won 2 Super Bowls, Chris Jones means, to me, he means that much. He really does. The plays that he makes, the plays that he affects. It's not even the sacks and the tackles. It's the plays that he affects. So
can they lock up Kadarius Toney to like a max?
Well, if they
deal
could,
now,
that'd
too?
be fantastic. What a bust. Kadarius, what a terrible
I just
draft
know
pick.
that grinds your gears.
Well,
Anytime
I mean, the
bring up
Giants got,
Kadarius
a second or a third round pick for it. But, I mean, they'll ruin that pick, so it doesn't matter anyway. Anyway,
the Giants' angst.
I mean,
at
they'll ruin that.
7:44.
I mean, God, Russ, you about made me. We got off the air on Friday. People need to know. And the Russell Wilson was going to stop by New York story came out.
I wanted that to happen
Nathaniel
so badly.
vomited in my car.
I wanted that to happen so badly for
up.
you because I just wanted to see your mood on Monday.
It's just, it would have been bad. It would have been real. I would have had a sleepless night like you.
I said
we'd have been two sleepless night guys in here hosting a sports radio show.
Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, and Tommy DeVito all in one
Tyrod
quarterback
Taylor.
room.
Who doesn't want that?
If that's not a Super Bowl championship roster, I don't know what is.
Okay, so this weekend, college basketball-wise here locally, and I want to dive into something with Benedict Mathurin at 8 o'clock, and obviously any free agent notes will stick with that. So I told Mark, before we came on the air that I want to be honest, I'm very conflicted here, okay? And I'll explain what I mean, because I don't want to sound like, and a lot of times when you get into debates around who is going to get in and who's not going to get in for the NCAA tournament, Mark, you sound like a shill for one team or one conference over another. That's right. And by the way, Nathaniel, if you don't mind, give me shirts 11, if you don't mind. The head coach there at Indiana State. JMV was in attendance. He was looking good. We'll play this here in a minute. It's a little bit long, but he had his plea to the NCAA tournament committee. And so Indiana State, Mark, they're getting ready to have a terrible week. Mm-hmm. Okay, now let me go back. Here's why I am conflicted. I love their story. Okay, we have followed Indiana State here, have we not?
Yes, we have.
I mean, this radio station has had their coach on. JMV has had their coach on, 10 times this season?
Almost weekly, yeah.
I mean, and he would have them on a time or two this week if they had won yesterday and we knew for sure that they're in the NCAA tournament. Now, as it stands, and listen, Joe Lunardi is not one of the top bracketologists in the country, but he's the one that everyone goes to. I would say, you would go there, you go to ESPN.com. And so Joey Brackets has them being one of the last 4 teams in. Now, they're not the last team in the tournament, but they're at the top of that list. And on that list are Power 6 schools. You have Virginia, Colorado. I got to be honest, I've seen precious little of Colorado this season, and then St. John's and Rick Pitino, who is very much, who we talked about on the show, has been very much a bubble-licious team, has St. John's. If you said, hey, what's the team that just, you look at them, you're like, they're on the bubble the last several weeks and going into conference tournament week, it would be St. John's. They have good wins. They have bad losses. They're a team that really no one cares about, but they have a coach, so it makes them a little bit more interesting. But here is the reality, and I hate this for Indiana State. They are a great story, but they don't have a great resume. Now, if Bowen were here, and Mark, you can be him you can be KB for a second.
Should I take my shirt off?
He would Notre Dame, by the way, lost. He would look at the net ranking, right? Mm-hmm. Their net ranking, it went down yesterday after the loss, but it's right around 29. And again, this is going to be updated so much that it's 29 now, and it's going, in my estimation, it's going to be somewhere between 29 and 35 when all the conference tournaments are over. So they are going to have a net, they're absolutely, even with the loss yesterday, Indiana State is going to have a net ranking, a number system created by the NCAA, okay, that is going to show them as an NCAA tournament team. The reality is that they don't have much of a resume. 23 of their 28 wins are quad 3, quad 4, or non-Division I opponents. That's the way it is. And here's the other problem that it brings up. It brings up the conversation around what? Around the Power 5, Power 6, who they get many opportunities in quad 1 and quad 2. We're talking about generic teams here. I'm talking about Mississippi State and Seton Hall and Virginia and the boring as bleep style that Virginia plays. And we're talking about Colorado and TCU and Jamie Dixon. And it's going to get down to the debate of, do you want the mid-major to get in, or do you want a 10, 11, 12, 13 loss Power 5 team to get in. And the media has already rallied around Indiana State. And I just happen to think that the committee is going to go with those Power 5, Power 6 schools, Mark.
Yeah.
I hate it for them. But what I will say about Indiana State, and Josh Schertz knows this. Let's cue up that sound, Nathaniel. Is they had to win on Sunday. Like, ultimately, the crying and the whining, I get it. Again, I love the story. I wish we were sitting here today and we were praising Indiana State for the season that they had and the regular season championship that they had and then the postseason championship that they had. But it's the reason that life in the mid-major is so difficult. It's the reason if you're a really good player in the mid-major, a lot of times you leave because you want to play in the NCAA tournament, and it's one of the reasons these coaches move up. Now, Josh Schertz, I want to dive into him here in a second. We'll play this sound. The other thing on Josh Schertz is he is absolutely on the short list at Louisville. 100%. Now, I think they will take other swings, Mark. I think they'll take a swing at Scott Drew, who I would be stunned if he left Baylor. I think they'll take 2 or 3 swings before they get to Josh, but I think he is third. I think he's around third on their list. And so we'll see what happens. I know a lot of Louisville people, okay, some of the money guys were watching the game yesterday. I know some that were at the game yesterday.
You got some insight. You got a source.
So I think they absolutely, he is on their list. I don't think he's first. I don't think right now he's second, but I think he's on their list. This is a little long. Here's Schertz yesterday, his plea to the NCAA committee.
28 wins, outright regular season champions of the 9th ranked, league in the country. Played every one of our quad 1 games away from home. Only lost 3 games all year. We were at full strength. Didn't have Robbie for Alabama. Didn't have Kent. Got hurt early against Illinois State and missed Southern Illinois. Think this is the 9th best league in America. We were the outright regular season champions. Won 17 games. Won 28 games. I think, we've proven this tournament, we're good enough to be in the NCAA tournament. And I know, everybody, it's to me, and I know things are getting skewed towards, basically just kind of like, the Power Fives and the Autonomous Six or whatever. But that's, that's the romanticism of the tournament, right? Has been, the mid majors and the high majors competing. And that's what March Madness is not, one Power Five upsetting another Power Five. And March Madness has always been, in basketball, the underdogs having a chance to make a run, the mid majors, it doesn't exist in football. It's just not wired that way. But in basketball, that's that's what makes the NCAA tournament special, is that opportunity. And we've, our resume, I think we're 26 in the net coming in today. I think we'll be a top 30 net team walking out of here somewhere around 28, I bet. All our metrics line up. It'd be a shame to do that and then, put in somebody who's, 18 and 15 playing. And like I said, if we were playing in a lower level league, I get it, but we're in the 9th league in the, 9th ranked league in the country.
And what Josh Schertz was talking there, it's kind of funny because in this article, there's a note that says
9th ranked league.
The rating system used by the NCAA gives the Sycamores the highest at-large marks, even though Indiana State's best win in net terms, the net rankings you're referring to, is a road victory at Bradley. Whether the committee lands primarily at the beginning or the end of this previous sentence may decide the team's fate. Boy, that is true.
They're just going to sit for a week, and you're just going to need Colorado State and Colorado and Seton Hall and Mississippi State. Heck, maybe even, he's talking about, we watched that Michigan State team yesterday against Indiana.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me, Andy, gun to your head, would you rather have Indiana State in or Michigan State? I'd love to have Indiana State in. The reality is, though, 0 wins over the NCAA top 100 in the net. They do have a quad 4 ranking. Their non-con schedule per KenPom was 302. I just, again, 23 of their 28 wins are quad 3, quad 4, not in Division 1. I hate saying it. I just don't see it. I think they're going to be on the outside. It's a sad thing to say, but what I will get lost is they had a chance to beat Drake yesterday and to get in. And we don't need to lose sight that they had a chance yesterday to get in and to throw all of this nonsense away, and they didn't do
And
it.
trail by
So,
double digits a lot of the
down
time.
by 18.
I still
so you
think
just
they
can't
find
do
a
that.
way.
Okay.
I'm going Oppo.
Listen, I hope they get in. I, of course, would love to see them instead of Mississippi State and Virginia scoring 32 points a game. But it is what it is.
We'll
see what
wood.
happens.
Go Sycamores. Come on.
We'll see what happens.
Put on a t-shirt.
In 6 days. JMP did look good. He has a jersey on and everything.
Go
so he looked
Trees.
good in everything else. So people were taking runs at JMV after the game, which I found funny on Twitter as well. Okay, on the other side, a thought on Benedict Mathurin, something that Purdue did yesterday, and a question for Purdue fans. Do you feel like your team needs to lose before they get to the NCAA tournament? We'll talk about it. It's the wake-up call here on The Fan, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Next year's rookies have been poked, prodded, tested.
Hanging out with you in the DriveHuber.com studios. No Bowen today. Mark Deitchen hanging out with us. Nathaniel Finch waking up early, producing today's effort. I'm Andy Sweeney. Nate Atkins going to join us coming up at 8:30. We'll get his thoughts. Did you see this, Mark? He was there at the Indiana State game. He was in St. Louis.
Yeah,
a little Arch Madness.
Yeah, I saw that. He was
for him,
covering the team and all that stuff.
So we can
very
ask.
good.
Yeah, we can ask him about that, and then obviously legal tampering in the NFL.
My favorite term.
We've already seen some moves out there, some re-signings. I guess Russell Wilson. On the 1-year deal, whatever it's going to end up being to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Russell Wilson is pretty much washed up, but we'll see there. Mike Tomlin always finds himself in the playoffs, so he's got to be thinking, if I can have a quarterback that's just a little bit better, I can get you to the postseason, man. So we'll see what happens there. It only matters, again, another AFC team. You talk about the Colts will be right there, just like it was last year.
How about
Pittsburgh.
the bag that Baker Mayfield got? Did you see that?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield goes into, it's more of like a 2-year deal.
Still.
But he got a ton of money, and the main thing around it is, if you're Tampa Bay and you re-sign Mike Evans, you can't go and get a young quarterback here.
Right.
They're not in the position in the draft. They're not bad enough. Hell, they made the playoffs last year. They're not bad enough that you're going to be able to get a quarterback. So free agent wise, where do you go? And I think the thing that's looming over it is Kirk Cousins always gets paid. I mean, I expect Kirk Cousins to sign, if it's a 2-year deal, whatever it is, for how much? More than $35 million a year guaranteed? I mean, don't we? When we talk about Kirk Cousins, he always gets paid. And so right now, Atlanta is by far the runaway guy, the runaway team to get Kirk Cousins. That's what the Vegas odds will tell you. I believe the Vegas Raiders are second, then Minnesota is third. So you look at the Broncos and you look at potentially Vegas. Again, we'll see what happens with Justin Fields and Kirk Cousins. And you talk about the Minnesota Vikings as well. You're looking at maybe 3 teams there that may really need a quarterback, right? Going into the NFL draft in 7 weeks or so. All right, Nate Atkins will join us in a half an hour. I wanted to ask this, and I understand that this may sound like a stupid question, Mark. Okay? So, and I haven't even brought this up to you, okay, in our lengthy pre-show meeting that started at 3:30 a.m., okay?
I couldn't sleep, so I was like, let's talk.
I wanted to bring this up to you. I think Purdue fans, and help me here, Purdue fans are like whatever with the Big Ten tournament. That's my read of it. It's not a negative thing. Sometimes you go in, and this hasn't been Purdue the last several years, but there are teams that enter the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State is a good one. The SEC tournament that enter, and they're like, okay, we need to win a game or two. St. John's is a perfect example. St. John's or a Seton Hall in the Big East. They know they need to win at least a game. And if they can win 2, they know that's what is going to put them over the hump, if you will, to solidify themselves as an NCAA tournament team. There are other teams. I think Kentucky probably fits this mold. I don't know if an Auburn does. I tell you, I'm way off on Alabama. I watched them again this weekend. I didn't love them. Michigan State is probably in. They're more in the 8, 9, 10 seed. But if you're an 8, 9, 10 seed, you want to make sure you at least stay there, right? Or if you're an 8, you want to say, hey, let's win a game or two. Now we're a 7 seed. Now we don't have to play the 1 seed. If I'm Michigan State, it's like, okay, now I'm not in the 8, 9 game. Now I'm not having to play, Tennessee or one of these big 1 seeds, even though Tennessee got smoked at home. Like Kentucky enters about a 3 or 4. Well, if they're a 4, they can win a couple games and go be a 3, right? So there's all different levels of what conference tournament means. The reality is that it would be just another notch in the belt, if you will, for Matt Painter. What this team has accomplished the last handful of years is to win another Big Ten tournament. If I am a Purdue fan, I don't really care that much.
Right.
I love to beat Minnesota. If I'm losing, I lose on Saturday. I lose to a good team. I lose in the semifinals, and I just kind of move on. You know, to me as well, the last thing, of course, you want is what you almost had. You saw Edie go down with a twisted ankle in the first half. Braden Smith, all these guys are twisting. Braden Smith twisted his ankle in the ref. And you don't want that. So, you would say, I'll take a loss to Minnesota on Friday or somebody else on Saturday if it means my team is ready to go. Here's my question. And I think fans are all over the place on this. And when I followed Kentucky, twice I dealt with that. Now, one was 1996, if you remember that championship team and everything else had Tubby Smith after Pitino was gone. The other was the Anthony Davis year. Anthony Davis and company, 2012, they lost. Do you remember who they lost to? No, you don't, because you're a human. You have things going on in your life. They lost to Kevin Stallings and Vanderbilt. Okay? The reason I bring that up is some people believe that it's not a bad thing to take that loss before you get to the NCAA tournament. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense.
That it gets you focused, if you will. Now,
gets you rested.
I can flip it the other way, that losing, especially if you're like Purdue and you lost on Friday to I say crap, but not a very good Minnesota team, that's not good. In fact, Purdue might look at the exact Purdue fans might look at it the exact opposite and say, we need to be playing, even if it is the Big Ten tournament, Mark, we need to be playing our absolute best basketball right now, because if we lose, if we do anything but win the Big Ten tournament, people will say, well, here we go with Purdue again. So I went all the way back to the Duke. I went back to 2009. Okay, I think that's what it was. 2009, 2010 with Duke, when they won the title. Okay, and I'm gonna work our way up. You ready for this? So let's go from last year. Do you remember last year? So UConn won the national title, and UConn, by the way, was dominant. Dominant last year in winning the title. Take a guess. I'm not gonna do this with every team because I don't expect you to know. When did UConn lose last year? Do you remember at all?
Oh boy.
They lost December 31st.
Yeah.
So they went January, February, March, first weekend of April. They went 3 months plus. Go ahead. You got some news?
We have breaking Colts news.
Okay, give it to me.
Adam Schefter. This is a real Adam Schefter tweet.
Is it Darn Schefter or
no,
is it Adam
real.
Schefter?
Just happened a minute ago. The Colts are signing linebacker Zaire Franklin to a 3-year, $31.26 million contract extension. The deal was confirmed by his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, and Kyle Lincoln. So the Colts lock up Zaire Franklin, who I think is a fantastic player on their defense, to a long-term deal. 3 years, $31.26 million.
Did it have the guaranteed money on there?
It does not, no.
That seems very friendly, does it not,
Yes.
to be paying him around $10 million a year? Am I wrong with that?
No, I would agree with you there.
So he made, if you're Zaire Franklin, you made base salary last year $2.5 million. You were set to make 2.8 this coming season in 2024. So if you make around 10 and you're Zaire Franklin, you're 28 years old, you're going from 2.5 to 3 mil a year up to about 10 mil per year if you're Zaire Franklin.
That's a very good deal for Zaire Franklin. That's a very good deal for the Colts, I would say. I said that's a win-win situation if I saw one. I like Zaire Franklin a lot. He's a great interview that we've had on the show many times, but great to see that they lock up.
He'd have been a free agent too.
Yeah, they lock up a very key piece to their defense ahead of free agency starting. That is very good to see.
Yeah, I think people will like that.
Kevin Bowen has Wi-Fi. He just tweeted out.
What did he tweet? What did Bowen tweet?
Deserved pay increase for the defensive captain. Hell of a story from 7th-round pick to contract that would span a 9-year career. So Kevin has Wi-Fi in his Tennessee cabin.
He's probably on his way back, isn't he, by now? I don't know.
He was staring at the
Monday brunch.
He was staring at his phone Friday, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I'm looking at this weather report in Tennessee. It does not look good." I'm like, "Kevin, buck up, man."
Oh man, buck up! I love you telling someone to buck up.
You gotta play golf. Who cares if it's raining?
Well, I mean, it can't be raining too much if you're playing golf, right? You can deal with the cold.
The guy in Caddyshack played till he got struck by lightning.
You can't deal with that. All right, so that's big news, Zaire Franklin. Let me just go through these. We'll come back to that. Again, Nate Atkins in about 20 minutes. So UConn, they went the entire year without losing, okay? The entire calendar year. Kansas, they lost, 2 years ago, Kansas won the national title. They last lost in February 26th, backed by March 1st. They lost back-to-back games, and then they went on to win. Baylor the year before, they lost in the Big 12 semis, and then, of course, we had no tournament. What was it, 2020, the COVID year. By the way, you know what today is? The 4-year anniversary of? I saw it. Did you guys see that? It's the 4-year anniversary today of the NBA calling their season.
Oh, that's fun to remember. Thanks for that memory lane.
It is. It's the 4-year anniversary.
I was thinking it's 311 day.
I mute him. Virginia.
Okay, Mark.
Virginia, 311 day. Virginia, they lost in the ACC semis. Villanova, this is back when they were good and they had Jay Wright. February 2nd, North Carolina, when they won, they lost in the ACC semis. Villanova the year before, they lost to Seton Hall in the Big East finals. Duke lost the year before, March 13th to Notre Dame. How about that? In the Big East finals. Duke, ACC semis. I can go back through all of them. I know it's numbers on the radio. The reason I did this is we have 7-8 examples of teams that have lost mostly in the semifinals because of the byes and everything else in the first team. Like, Purdue's not losing to Minnesota on Friday night, right?
Right.
Like, they're going to win that game. If they were to lose, it would at least be in the semifinals.
They could sit their starters and they're going to win.
I mean, they would probably. Speaking of, did you see the end of the women's game, the South Carolina LSU game?
I did not.
Oh,
the fight? I saw that.
The
I didn't see it live, but also my timeline was like, what happened?
I got to work out exactly who's going to be suspended or not. A couple of those players are going to be suspended for their first round of the NCAA tournament game because of the fight. I did love, if you didn't see it, South Carolina and LSU, who are the two of the better teams, if not two of the best teams, besides Iowa and a few others in the country. They're going to fight. One of the girls' brothers hopped the railing and got on the thing.
I don't know what he was thinking.
Like, you can't do that, man.
That's the F around and find out situation.
You can't do that. But I wonder if Purdue fans, I wonder how many of them think, no, we need to play the best basketball because March bugaboos, it's something that we'd kind of worry about. Or if there's a segment of the Purdue fan base that is looking at, president and saying, hey, we could lose in the finals, the semifinals of the Big Ten, and it's okay, and maybe it refocuses a team. For my view on Purdue is them losing in the Big Ten tournament would not focus them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think some of these other teams, it's been okay. I actually don't view it that way with Purdue. I want them to win in Minneapolis this week. That's what I want them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I could see both sides of that because Purdue fans have been scarred the last couple of Marches. Some would say that their season starts and ends in March these days because they're like, I don't care what they do in the regular season. What are they going to do in the tournament?
I feel that way.
Yeah, and so I could see where some people would say you need to win out, you need to win this Big Ten and just keep the good vibes rolling. And they could see others where they say, well, if you lost and you get some rest on Zach Edey and Fletcher Lawyer and all that stuff, that'd be nice too. It's cement on top of cementing our first round, our number one overall seed.
Yeah, they can't gain or lose anything this week.
They're not. No. If they go out in the first round, they're not going to all of a sudden be like a 4 seed or anything. They're not.
They're playing in Indianapolis. They're the 1 seed. I mean, the only thing you could say is, well, you're losing out being the overall number 1 seed. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, honestly, who cares? I think Tennessee might have, maybe they could play themselves if they came out, and they probably play, I would imagine, Thursday night. I need to look this up in the SEC tournament. They would be one that maybe that's probably Friday, that I would look at and say, if they lost over again, maybe they're not a 1 seed. Somebody could slip up, and they could move down to a 2 seed. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very simple. If I'm a Purdue fan, I don't even care. Like, to me, I don't care what happens this weekend. I think they'll probably win the Big Ten tournament, though, knowing them and how they show up. Now, this is also, just speaking about the game last night, it's also 3 straight games now where Fletcher Lawyer has been better. I think that matters. I think it matters quite a bit, potentially. And then the 2 other things that have nothing to do with the actual game. Well, one kind of does. I don't know if you saw the end of the game. I forget the guy's name, and I apologize. I'm sure Todd Meyer, somebody will text us. Did you see they put in the bench guys at the end of the game?
Yeah.
And did you see Wisconsin got a steal at the end of the game from one of the bench guards of Purdue and went in and got a dunk? It took the game from 10 to 8. You know where I'm going with this.
Uh-huh.
That spread was 9.
Did you lose?
I didn't, but I mean, a lot of people, if you had Purdue at 8.5, 9, 9.5, and that's where it settled, is about 9.
Those bad
You
beats,
were
man.
good to go until 10 seconds left when they put the bench guys in. And the poor kid at guard, Nathaniel, did you say he wasn't paying attention? And I might have been Blackwell, just ran up from Wisconsin and took the ball from him and went in and got a dunk. And the game's over. They inbounded it. It was 2 seconds to go, and that was the end. And it's senior day, and it's an 8-point win. It's Wisconsin, and and it's all great. But
I'm not a complete degenerate, so I didn't pay that much attention to it. But I could see where some people are like,
I didn't.
Damn it.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know. And the game was at 10, and it goes to 8, and I go, man. Boy,
somebody.
I wonder what the spread was, because right around a 10-point spread is what you would think that game would be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Wisconsin is still well-respected, way more than they should be. To me, if I'm anyone in the tournament, give me Wisconsin. I'll take them in the first round. The other thing, and I know they've done this, and this is where I would need some help. I know they've done this recently quite a bit, and that is honoring guys when they're not 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So Purdue has put Swanigan, his number up, within the last 7,
Right.
they didn't wait until he was 45 years old.
Right.
They didn't wait till later. You've seen Ivy, you've seen a bunch of the guys somewhat recently here in Purdue's history get their jersey retired. I thought it was a cool scene saying, hey, we're putting Zach Edey's up, and we're doing it today.
Yeah, on senior night.
We're doing it today.
Quote your swan song, go out and have yourself a game, and then look up in the rafters, there's your jersey.
Yeah, and they've done that with I feel like 5 or 6 guys. I know they did. I know Hummel's up there, but it just feels like there's some teams that don't do that have like 3 or 4 numbers retired ever. It's sacred, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Zach Edey would trump all of that anyway by how good he's been. So it's very much, we'll move off Purdue here, but it's very much final exam time.
Yeah.
I feel like for the Boilers. So go ahead.
The jersey retire. I hadn't heard ahead of time that they were going to do that, so I thought that was a kind of cool thing that maybe they announced it. I didn't hear about it ahead of time that they were going to do that. So when they were doing it, I was like, that's actually pretty awesome.
No, I think. Listen, I don't know if it leaked out in the Purdue circles. I'm not in the Purdue circles. I don't know if it leaked out.
You're not on the message boards?
The blackandgold.com, if everyone knew that it was going to happen or not. I didn't know it was going to happen. I thought it was a nice touch. The only thing I thought was you bring him back next year, one of those home games, try to get ticket sales up in case you're not as good. That's what I thought they might do.
In case you're going through a transition period.
Yeah, in case you're having a year where you're fine, but you're not the team that you used to be. The news down this morning, what was it? We don't have the exact numbers, but Zaire Franklin getting a 3-year contract extension there with the Colts. For around, what was it, 3 for about 33?
31 points.
31.
I'm trying to see if there's actually guaranteed money.
The guaranteed money.
If that's leaked out, I've not seen that
So right now, about $10 million per year.
31.26 million. No talk yet of what has been.
Yeah,
how
so
much
I'm
is
sure
guaranteed.
the guaranteed money will be. Again, my thing has always been with the Colts free agency is yes, who they get, who they're after. I told you, ESPN.com put up a story. I think 2 days ago, and they referred to Ballard potentially wanting to get involved maybe with one of these defensive linemen. And so if you pay defensive lineman money, to me, that would mean you're not taking a defensive lineman with the 15th overall pick. We would again go back to to me, we'd go wide receiver, corner, and then have the conversation of Brock Bowers is there at 15, which I have no idea if he's going to be there at 15. But that would be, to me, you would move, I know KB might not love it, but you would move the Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, some of these stud edge guys, defensive linemen, edge rushers. To me, you would move those guys out if Ballard wants to make a substantial swing in free agency on that. I have been kind of on the record with everybody else. Again, we'll have Nate Atkins here in 10 minutes. I've kind of been on the record of being a little bit more interested in bringing in a veteran corner. Now, you still could do that, but if you sign a defensive lineman, you give more money to Zaire Franklin, you sign a cornerback, to me, who else is not there. The other thing I would say, if it's Grover Stewart, we look at Blackman, we look at Stewart, and we look at Kenny Moore, those as the big three. And there are other underlining guys that are still there that we should talk about. But you look at those three specifically, who else values those guys? We don't know. That's the one thing we don't know. We know we like them. We know Chris Ballard likes them. Ballard views them probably as his guys, taking care of his guys. We saw how the run defense fell apart when Grover Stewart was not there. We saw, when there were injuries to Kenny Moore in the back end of that defensive back roster, Blackman, the final game of the season, we saw what that meant, but we also don't know what other teams are willing to do. A good example is there was a safety yesterday. Mark Dykton's Chicago Bears picked up Kevin Byard.
Yep.
People thought maybe it was a little bit rich, that contract, whatever it was. It was 2 years.
2 years
maybe
and
7,
15.
8. Yeah, something like that, 7-8 mil. So it's not, it's not a bank-breaking type deal. It's a guy in his 30s, now on his third team in a calendar year, but he's a good player. But it was seen as maybe a little bit higher than most teams would give up. While the Bears have a lot of money, and they obviously, Eberflus and company, they need to win. They need to win now if all these guys are going to keep their job. It's that sort of conversation. It's Kenny Moore's worth this much, Ballard will go to this, but if it takes one team that will go just a little bit above, suddenly he might not be in your plans, and those are the conversations that we don't know of. And do we get him? I don't know, but it's a possibility. We found out that we may find out, hey, it's not just the Colts. Other teams want your free agents as well.
If I'm Chris Ballard and the rest of that front office, and you have those in-house free agents, whether it's Kenny Moore, whether it's Gardner Minshew, whether it's Rigoberto Sanchez, whoever it is, you give them an offer. You say, if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, test the market. Come back with us with the offer that you have, and we'll see if we can match it or do better. We'd like to keep you here, but if another team offers you something that we can't do, then, we'll send you on your way. But I'd say you at least hear what other teams are offering those guys, see what their value is. They come back to you, come back to the table, say, this is what so-and-so is offering me. Can you match it? Otherwise, I'm going to go. And you go from there. And you see where you're at. You can see what the value of a Gardner Minshew is going to be. Can you have him there? If not, what's Anthony Richardson's backup quarterback situation going to look like? That's a huge issue. What's Kenny Moore going to do if he goes off and goes somewhere else? What are they going to do at corner? They have a safety need that they can do.
What are you going to do backup running back?
We're going to do a punter.
Yeah,
you need Rigoberto Sanchez.
You know that Jonathan Taylor's not playing 17 games.
Zach Moss could be gone.
Yeah, you know that Anthony Richardson's not playing in the full 17 games. Like, you feel confident saying that, right?
Yes.
That Jonathan Taylor somewhere is going to miss a game, 2 games, 3 games, something like
When
that.
given Anthony Richardson's track record from last season, you better be sure that if you lose Gardner Minshew, you have a sound option at backup quarterback.
ESPN mentioned Ryan Tannehill, who is lead-footed as I am. So he said,
my wife and I were watching the Patriots documentary on Apple TV.
By the way,
it's fantastic. It's outstanding. Okay. But they talked. We caught up. We watched all the first 8 episodes. The last 2 come out on Friday. But the last episode is about them drafting Jimmy G and how he was more fleet-footed than Tom Brady, and they called Tom Brady molasses. Randy Moss called him on the sidelines like, we've got a gazelle back there as opposed to the molasses at number 12.
Oh, boy, Jimmy G.
And Tannehill kind of reminds me of molasses. That would be him in the backfield.
If you ask me who reminds you of molasses the most in the NFL at quarterback, it would probably be Ryan Tannehill.
It was
at that
Matt
point.
Ryan, and it would be Ryan Tannehill.
You know what,
it
might be Mac Jones, obviously, too.
Maybe.
Mac Jones is pretty bad. He goes to Jacksonville for, what, a 6th-round pick? I think it was yesterday. You can't listen. I love the NFL and free agency. If there's one thing you can't make me care about, it's a 6th-round pick acquisition of Mac Jones in Jacksonville. So we shall see what happens there. Nate Atkins going to join us here in a couple minutes. Let's run through a check down quick. Do you have the open, Nathaniel? Fire up the open. We'll get to a morning check down before we get Nate Atkins on.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, let's start, Mark, with the Pacers. 111-97, that's your final yesterday. Last night, over the Magic. Boy, Only 18 points in the first quarter. You're thinking,
Oh my
here
God.
we go again. Another early timeout by Carlisle. And then after that third quarter was unbelievable. 39 points, outscoring the Magic 39-21, really putting the game away in the third quarter. Post-game, Tyrese Halliburton. Every one of these games matters now.
Yeah, I think that where we are right now and how close the race is and how impactful every game is, I think that you have to approach games just kind of one game at a time. I mean, obviously understanding standings and stuff like that, but I feel like we were kind of hyper-focused on that a couple weeks ago. And we just got to understand we got to take it one game at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah, first game knowing that Benedict Mather now going to be out the rest of the season with that shoulder injury. Up next for the Pacers on the road in OKC. Our coverage tomorrow night beginning at 7:30 here on the Fan.
Yeah, the only I mean, it was great that they got the win, but Andrew Nembhard 25 minutes, no points. That wasn't great. Did you see that? It wasn't much of an impact there.
Yeah.
But elsewhere, you got Siakam and
can't
Halliburton each had 20 points, 17 points off the bench each for TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin. They will need those kind of production from the bench with Mathurin out for the season. On the college basketball hoops court, you got Purdue get the 78-70 win over the Wisconsin Badgers, like we talked about earlier. Zach Edey hanging in the rafters, not literally, but his jersey's up there now. He went out his swan song at West Lafayette, 25 points, 14 rebounds, 3 blocks, 3 assists. He looked great. Now they'll get ready for the Big Ten tournament.
God,
on
Braden
Friday.
Smith almost had a triple-double,
I know,
too. His
I know.
number's going up in 2 years. 2 years.
For Indiana, 65-64 win over Michigan State. They will play the winner of, I believe, Penn State and Michigan. Look out for that barn burner coming to you on Thursday evening there.
Juwan Howard get fired, too?
I don't know.
Juwan Howard might get fired.
He's kind of the Mike Woodson of over there, so I feel like they're going to keep him around, too. These schools that have these guys
but he's dysfunctional.
I know.
He is dysfunctional.
Schools that sign their own, they have a hard time letting go. So we'll see what happens there. Indiana State, rough go there. They fell to Drake 84-80. Sycamore is definitely on the bubble. Will they make it? Will they not? We'll have to see. Andy doesn't think they will. I'm holding out strong for the Trees. I think they might get it, so we'll see what happens there. And then on the IndyCar racetrack, Joseph Newgarden just blew the competition out of the water.
What did he lead? 92 of the 100 laps?
92 of 100 laps. He won by almost 8 seconds. So that was a dominant win by him. Pato O'Ward finished second. Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, and Colton Herta rounded out the top 5. They get back on the track 2 Sundays from now in the Thermal $1 million Challenge in California.
Oh, Florida then California.
I know.
That's pretty
not
nice.
Bad. Ain't bad.
That's not.
Jake Query's
Query sounded good, man. Listen to the broadcast a little bit yesterday.
His
Sounded
freaking
good.
flyer miles are.
He sounded
are gonna be
very.
up there.
He sounds. It's so different than what he does here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is very long form. You got 3 hours. There, you have 4 seconds.
Yeah.
To talk. It's a very different broadcasting style that Jake Query has to do between what he does here and what he has to do on IndyCar
And the way
radio.
they hand it off too is something that is not.
It's a good broadcast,
It's not to go
yeah.
under the radar because the way that those guys just transition off of each other and can just throw to each other right off the tip, it's just wild. So well done by them.
Newgarden
Very
was
solid
good.
broadcast. So yeah, very well done. And now they get 2 weeks going. They'll get going in California.
Well, there we go. Nate Atkins, what does he think of the Zaire Franklin news? What else might be on the horizon for the Colts here as legal tampering? It's time for some NFL free agency. We'll talk with Nate Atkins from the Star next year on The Fan.
Let Bill Estes put you behind the wheel of the powerhouse brands that define American toughness. Ford, Chevy, Ram, and GMC. BillEstesTrucks.com. BillEstesTrucks.com.
Luxair is the intelligent way to keep your home comfortable. Luxair units are designed, engineered, and assembled to last. To become a dealer, 317-926-6061.
Hey, it's JMV, and this is your last chance for the discounted Legends Golf Club membership for 2024 and 2025. $249 a year.
million deal because at that time, just timing thing where he had been a backup in that system, special teams player. They were able to get a fantastic value on him, and then he started to break out just last season, and back-to-back years breaks his own franchise tackles record. And so I was just kind of curious how they were going to handle that because he had one more year on that deal.
Yep.
Chris Ballard can draft linebackers in his sleep. We've seen that. So Zaire was, he was ready to get that reward. But this kind of shows just how much he brings to this team. That's even beyond the tackles, as far as being a leader, being a team captain. He's one of the best leaders I've really ever been around. I've seen that in a few different ways, and it manifested last season where you had guys on the offensive side of the ball, young players, practice squad players, talking about how Zaire would approach them and talk to them about being that late round draft pick or being that backup who has to wait their turn. He's sort of the culture setter for this franchise. So now that Shaquille Leonard had a lot of that responsibility for a few years, now he's gone, and they kind of need another linebacker to really fill that void. They had money to spend because a lot of cap space in general, but Shaquille Leonard's contract is coming off the books after this season, and then Zaire's extension will start next year. So it's good timing for him, good reward for him, and just one of those fits that kind of works for everybody.
Nate Atkins from the Star with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. I've seen some people kicking around on Colts Twitter, disappointing day, as they sit around and they want Chris Ballard to make one of these big moves. So whether it's someone outside the building or someone like a Zaire Franklin, obviously we talk so much about guys like Grover Stewart and Kenny Moore and Blackman and everything else. What do you find, if not, I guess today, maybe today and tomorrow, but this week, what are you watching for, and what are you most interested in seeing how things play out for the Colts? What few items could I nail you down on that you're watching the most?
Yeah, I think you have to start with some of their in-house free agents. So Zaire Franklin was, one extension they wanted to get done, but they obviously have other guys who are, now able to negotiate with other teams here starting at noon, like Julian Blackman, Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, are kind of the big three that are going to be able to do that. And two of those guys playing at the defensive back position I think is very, very interesting because that's the spot where the Colts have to they want to, those are their veterans. They need to get more experience there. They need to get more loaded there. It's also, it's two very, very different markets where cornerback is incredibly thin right now. That's why you see teams just lining up and negotiating and having a bidding war for L'Jarius Sneed of the Chiefs. But then at safety, that is one of the most bloated markets that I've seen in free agency recently. It feels like every couple of days there's a new safety, Pro Bowl type of safety hitting the market, whether it's Justin Simmons of the Broncos or Quandre Diggs of the Seahawks. It's a talented position. So it's interested to see. I know both of those guys would love to be back, Julian and Kenny. And, I think the same goes for DeForest Buckner, or not DeForest, Grover Stewart, who's the other free agent that they have. And so, in general, Chris Ballard loves to bring back the guys that he's put on this roster. So I think there's a solid chance all three are back. But it's hard to read into, especially that safety market where there's just so many different options, so many moving pieces, and a clear need for the Colts to get better there. So I'm curious to see how much they balance bringing back guys who are pretty good for them at veterans that they did have versus maybe taking a bigger swing, or if they want to, maybe they do a mix of both where they bring them back and they add somebody. But that in general, that secondary spot, I think they really need to sign at least two veterans at the bare minimum. It could be Kenny and Julian back, but they probably need a third one given all the youth that they dealt with last year. So whether that's an outside corner or free safety, that's what's going to be kind of fascinating to watch this week.
Indy Star Colts reporter Nate Atkins joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Nate, of those 7 in-house free agents, if you had to put your money on it, how many do you see coming back and how many move on?
Of the 7 that are out there, I'd probably put the over-under at about 4. I'm thinking about it. So I personally do not expect to see Gardner Minshew or Zach Moss back just because the years that they had, their best years yet in the NFL, they're looking for starting opportunities that clearly don't exist here with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor coming back. So if they were to make it back, I think it would say more about the lack of a market that forms for them, the lack of opportunities, which certainly can happen for Moss at running back, but I don't find that as likely. The other guys, I think most of them are good candidates to come back, especially guys like, a guy like Rigoberto Sanchez seems like an easy re-signing to have. And then the other group, it's just about, do any of them find a better deal somewhere else? Does someone end up loving them more than Chris Ballard ends up loving them? I would guess that majority, just the way that Ballard operates, the cap space that they have, the answer will be that Indy is their top offer. But I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two sneak away. You think about a guy like Tyquan Lewis, who just finally had his big year relative to what he's gone through with injuries. 17 games played and some really impressive pressure numbers, and he's a little bit still buried here. So he's a guy that can get loose and get some money elsewhere. Kenny Moore, I think about that too, where obviously he's got a great fit here, but there are sometimes our teams that value the nickel corner just a little bit more than Gus Bradley, or sometimes a lot more than Gus Bradley has so far in his career. So I think a majority of them will be back, but I think it's right around that 4 number out of those 7.
You mentioned that you don't expect Gardner Minshew back. If that's the case, what are the Colts doing for backup for Anthony Richardson? Who do you think they'll be looking at in the free agent market, or is that something they might address in the draft?
It's something they could look at the draft, but I think at this stage they still are going to value that veteran presence because Anthony Richardson didn't really get his rookie year. He only got to play in 4 games, and even just those were partial games, and he's still developing as a passer. And they, even though the position will be fully his, I think they'll value the idea of someone else coming out there to help kind of with week-to-week game plans where we're going to see for the first time teams counter-adjust back to the things that Anthony's doing, and it helps to have a more experienced player that can kind of help see those week-to-week game plans before they get out there on the field. And also you need a guy that you can trust to go out there and deliver if Anthony were to deal with any more injuries. They trusted that with Gardner's experience. And so a guy like Tyrod Taylor has always stood out to me as both a very experienced and capable backup, but also someone who has played for Shane Steichen with the Chargers. So I think that's a really nice fit. Tyler Huntley is another backup who a little less experienced, but does have some, but he fits sort of if they want to go for the mobile backup, a guy that can step in and run some of the same system, which they didn't have last year with Gardner. I think they're going to stay open-minded with that, whether it's I don't think it has to be a mobile backup, but I do think it will likely be an experienced one, and mobility will kind of give them a little bit more of a leg up. So if it's not Gardner, I think Tyrod and Huntley are the 2 guys that have kind of stood out to me.
Nate Atkins with us here from the Star on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Again, the news this morning, that 3-year contract extension. Zaire Franklin will get the final numbers, but 3 for $31.3 here as I always love, Nate, the legal tampering. I love that term. Me and Mark have been smiling at that term. And there's a bunch of moves that have already happened that I want to get your thoughts on. But I don't know. Defensive line, corner, I mean, these are the 2 positions maybe where I see move the guys like Kenny Moore aside. If they were going to make some sort of sizable swing in free agency, perhaps those would be 2 of the positions. Do you think we will hear the Colts be attached to some sizable free agents, or do you think it will be more of the day 2, day 3 guys, the mid-level guys that can come in, you don't pay them a ton of money, and they can kind of outdo their contract? Something, quite frankly, the Ballard's been pretty good at the last few years.
Yeah, I think the majority of what they do will be in that sort of second wave look because that is Chris Ballard's wheelhouse. He kind of has been very open about how he thinks the top of the market deals in free agency are, pretty much paying A money for B players. And in general, you want to get that talent out of the draft and trust your ability to do that. But they have more money this year than they've had in most years just because they have the rookie quarterback under contract, and that's kind of where they're set up. So I think if they take a swing, and I do think they'll try for some, they've tipped us off at what position that's going to be. it's going to come in the secondary because they are in on L'Jarius Sneed. Multiple outlets have reported that they're, and that's to the level of not just entertaining a contract, but also entertaining giving up at least a day 2 pick to acquire him in a trade with the Chiefs. So, he's an inside-outside type of cornerback. One of those. He's just a cut above what's out there in free agency right now. So that's one spot. And I think they'll be looking around at the free safety, just the safety class in general. It's so loaded to the point where that can drop some of those guys who otherwise, if they were the top free agent, would get one of those monster deals Ballard doesn't like. It could drop them to a little bit more of a reasonable range because there's just only so many to go around. Only so many teams have the kind of cap space the Colts do to take a swing like that. So I do think you'll hear them at least in the conversations with those guys. But, of course, they're weighing them against just bringing back Julian Blackmon, who I think they'll actually get at a pretty sizable discount because of all of this and some of the injuries he's dealt with. So I definitely think they'll still sniff around at secondary. I think that's where you'll see their biggest signing come. I'm not quite sure if it'll break that top of the market range, but I think it'll at least be one of those. I think they owe it to themselves to go out there and get a starter at that position rather than just rely on youth. And so I think that's the most likely place.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, you bring back Gus Bradley in the conversation that Chris Ballard has had, in many forums, including with us last week or I guess 2 weeks ago was, I didn't give Gus Bradley enough, right? Okay, so you bring him back, you got to give him enough, right? And that can't be a third or fourth round pick. It's got to be getting, actual starters that can play in the NFL. Nate Atkins with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I got to ask you this because we'll see how this plays out in the next several hours and days if free agency goes on. I saw you following the Indiana State team yesterday. A heartbreaking loss, I think, will take them out of the NCAA tournament. What was the emotion there as you have a Drake team that is going dancing and their jubilation and the heartbreak that you saw on the faces of those Indiana State kids having such a great year? What did you make of that scene yesterday?
Yeah, I'll just say that Missouri Valley Conference was fascinating tournament to cover. I'd never covered the mid-major kind of level like that, and you just have these. It is such a push. It's a tournament type of feel because those teams don't know if they'll get in, and most of them are not going to get in. This was a rare year where the two teams that made that final, Drake and Indiana State, they both had aspirations to be able to get in, kind of regardless of the game. But that was an opportunity to just go out there and lock it up. And it was interesting to see Indiana State go down 18 in the second half, and that felt like the do-or-die moment for them to at least show the committee that they're worthy of being, in the field, being in range of a team. And that's when they launched just really a crazy, crazy comeback with Isaiah Swope just turning into Steph Curry basically and leading them all the way back. And then it fell just a little bit short. And so certainly they're subdued about that, but they very much believe that they're a tournament team. There was a strong case from Josh Schertz, their head coach, afterward about how pretty much no team with their net ranking, which is what the NCAA publishes, has ever missed tournament field. And so
I know
you've seen the NCAA, they have not given the benefit of the doubt to some of these mid-majors that haven't had the recent track record. But it's just interesting because you think about what March Madness is, the biggest appeal of it is those underdog stories and what those teams can do. And I think Indiana State has a great case to be not only a team that should make the field, but a team that could really scare some teams too. They're really built for to be one of those teams that takes down someone in a single elimination tournament. When you think about just some of their high end players like Robbie Avila and Ryan Conwell, that they run a very tight rotation. They basically have one bench player, which hurt them playing a third game in 3 days yesterday. They got 1 point out of their bench, and their top guys were taxed a little bit. But it helps more in a single elimination tournament where those rotations shrink. They get 2 days between games. And this is a team that plays super fast and just drains a lot of threes. And when they're at their peak, that was the day before against Northern Iowa, where they put up 94 points, 22 assists, 15 made threes. And the type of shots they were hitting, I think they're going to hit against most teams if they can be on that level. So I think they feel confident that they will make it. Actually, I think they really believe in that spot of the net ranking and what they've kind of that they've been in that mix all season long. But it's certainly going to be nervy next week because there is no guarantee, and it will be tough if they end up having a season where they have 28 wins and they end up getting ranked at a certain point and number one seed in their tournament, and that isn't able to get them back to the dance for the first time since 2011. That's kind of why Indiana.
It's a tough one.
I mean, they took over that arena like a home game because this is their moment, and they just really don't want it to end.
Nate Atkins from the Star. It's going to be busy. Going to be busy. I know you got the basketball aside, but all the NFL free agency news. What do the Colts do? What do the Colts not do? I know you and Joel will be following it every step of the way. Nate, appreciate the time this morning. Take care. We'll catch up down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Nate Atkins from the Star there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Let's take a quick break. Short segment on the other side. Did you see the end of the Duke UNC game? We could talk about that. Zaire Franklin gets the 3-year contract extension. We'll do that next here on The Fan on this Monday.
I'm Darren Andrews from We Grow Here Indy, and 18 years ago, I got my
Appreciate Nate Atkins joining us. You miss any of that conversation, any of our conversations here on the Wake Up Call, 1075thefan.com. Nathaniel Finch hanging out with us. Mark Dykton moving over to the hosting chair. KB will be back at it tomorrow. A little weekend trip. It was his brother's birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Something like that.
the
A
big
little weekend
4-0, he
trip.
said, yeah.
Oh, big. I know. I have that coming up in July.
Oh.
Big 4-0. Me and a bunch
Barbecue
of
at the
buddies.
Sweeney household? Or
What do you do? It's just a sad, like, it's
just
dude, it's
depressed?
sad. Don't laugh, Nathaniel. You'll be there, dude. It's sad. I remember I was like 33, 34, like 35, like laughing at it. Like, dude, I'm not kidding. I feel like my body's breaking down. I don't like anything about where I am right now in my life, age-wise.
I went to a daddy-daughter dance over the weekend in Pittsburgh, and I was getting dressed up, trying to look nice for my daughters and stuff. My oldest goes, "You look like Grandpa." I'm like, "You shut your mouth.
You
we will
shut
not.
your
we will
mouth.
not go.
I will turn this car around.
We will not go to this daddy-daughter dance. We will sit home and watch some more Patriots documentary."
You'll watch the Patriots documentary on Apple Plus.
I was never more insulted in my life. I'm like, I am 38 years old. I am not I don't look like my grandpa. No, I do not.
You look like Poppy.
No ice cream for you now.
Oh, man, that's great. By the way, did you happen to see, it is funny, is it not? Duke had the court stormed on him, and Filipowski got, quote-unquote, injured, and then he came back 3 days later, and he was doing windmill dunks and turnaround jumpers and hitting shots and everything else. Did you see the end of the North Carolina Duke game? So North Carolina, who's kind of like low-key owned Duke the last couple years now, Hubert Davis and company, they walk in, they get the win in Cameron Indoor, and all of their players are like, gesturing towards, one of the student sections, the lower level there at Cameron Indoor. The Duke students were throwing water on them and stuff. They're throwing gum at him. Somebody, I think it was Ingram goes, "I got hit by a gumball." Who's still, eating a gumball in the middle of a basketball game?
Better than batteries, I would say.
But I did see a bunch of media members got the water thrown on them. So you had some laptops that were wet. So I hope that they're okay. But it is funny, just, a couple weeks after they had the court stormed on them, that they in turn dumped water on the North Carolina players. That's great.
That was one of the under the radar North Carolina Duke matchups in quite some time. Maybe that was just me. But
I'm with you. It felt like you didn't see a commercial every 9 seconds like we usually do. Speaking of, we got to take a break. On the other side, GOATs of the weekend. What about Benedict Mathurin and the latest in free agency in the NFL? We'll talk about it next.
It's JMV for your 14 Central Indiana CarX locations. Lifetime brake pads, $109.99. Oil changes starting at $24.99.
right, 9 o'clock hour, DriveHuber.com studios. KB and Andy, it's the wake-up call. Appreciate Nathaniel Finch sitting in today. Producing, Mark Dykton in the hosting chair. KB back at it tomorrow. Another hour to go. Reminder, JMV at 3 o'clock. Query and Company coming your way at noon. I'm sure Jake will be all tan. Kissed by the sun in St. Pete.
Tan and tired, I'm assuming.
Tan and tired. How did he do that when he worked in the mornings? Boy, he had to be tired that next Monday, didn't he? On some of these.
Oh, yeah. He did a red-eye flight from Long Beach. I'm like, what the hell's the matter with you? Take a PTO day.
Oh, goodness. Well, it's a big Monday. It's a Reaction Monday. Tons that we've talked about today. I would say the biggest Colts news, what we've got this morning, a 3-year contract extension, which will start after next season for Zaire Franklin. He was set to be a free agent. You know, he signed that 3-year, $10 million deal, and after this coming season was going to be an unrestricted free agency, so a free agent. So at some point, the Zaire Franklin contract was going to be something talked about, and he gets that 3-year, $31.3 million extension. So that's a good for him, and it seems to be a good price. And it's good for the Colts.
Yep. Win-win.
As they keep trying to build this team. And now for me, you know, we just had Nate Atkins from the Star on about 35 minutes ago. For me now, it's what they do. I would say this, Mark. I believe in free agency. We're probably, you never know, we probably get a little bit of clarity on what they're going to do in the draft, probably a little bit. Like if they go out and they bring back Kenny Moore, like this to me would be a dream scenario for the Colts, okay? That they bring back Kenny Moore, and I love L'Jarius Sneed. I don't mind saying it for the Chiefs. I think he's a star. I think he's a really good player. Plus, he has that attitude that you kind of like with corners, okay? Because they're crazy guys. I mean, they're crazy people. Some of these corners are. And so I think he fits that mold of he has that edge, but he's a really good player. Again, I said this to Nate, that they have to do something free agent-wise. They need to bring in a starter because at the end of the year, and I'm not even yelling and screaming about it with him, but Chris Ballard brings back Gus Bradley. And what the main conversation piece around Gus Bradley is, well, I didn't give him enough, especially on the back end of the defense. Fair enough, okay? I think a lot of people would agree with that. Fair enough. Well, then you got to give him something, and it can't be a 4th-round pick. It can't be a 3rd-round pick. Heck, it can't even be Terrion Arnold at number 15. So for me, you bring back Kenny Moore. That's a deal that's not breaking the bank. It's a solid player. He's kind of one of your own guys. You know what you're getting with him. You bring in that slot corner with Kenny Moore, and then you go get a starter, whether that is, listen, Sneed, to me, he's the home run. Is he not? He's the home run.
Yeah, is that too much money tied up in your secondary then? Because then you're looking at you need a starting safety
Kendall
as well.
Fuller, is he a double or a triple? He's another name that's been thrown out there. So to me, you bring in a starter, you have Kenny Moore, and then if you want to go get another young player to throw in that room, so be it. So that's the corner. I continue to be interested in if they do anything defensive line-wise, because if they say, hey, we're going to go get Kenny Moore and another, let's say Kendall Fuller. Let's just use him as an example. You may not love him. Those are two guys. You throw them in, and they're your corners. To me, that moves that away the first couple rounds of the draft coming up. And then if you go and you make some sort of a swing with a defensive lineman, and I think part of that is also bringing back Grover Stewart. I think whether it's Grover Stewart or somebody just like Grover Stewart, you're going to need somebody like that. Then, okay, now you feel like the framework of your D-line and your corners, you've got a lot better. And then to me, you can say, okay, we probably get a veteran wide receiver because the Isaiah McKenzie experience did not work out. Isaiah McKenzie was a bust here.
Yeah.
He didn't play well. He got benched. Then he got suspended, and he was a complete mess. So you go get somebody who at least is a solid NFL wide receiver, and that opens you up in the draft to where You know you need weapons for Anthony Richardson. You can look at a Brian Thomas at 15. You can hope that a Brock Bowers is there at 15. To me, that is the dream scenario, is you get veteran good players. It probably costs a little bit of money on the defensive side of the football, and then you can go get that youth along with signing Michael Pittman Jr. to a 4-year big-time contract as well.
Yeah, I almost see the defensive side getting addressed in free agency and the offensive side waiting until the draft because you can get some young guys to pair up. I see you lock up Michael Pittman Jr. to a long-term deal, and then I feel like wide receiver-wise, you almost go into whether it's the 15th pick or somewhere else. That wide receiver group is so deep. You can add a wide receiver that could be your number 2 to Michael Pittman Jr., and Alec Pearson, Josh Downs move down a slot on the wide receiver depth chart, and then that's your wide receiving core. Maybe you add a tight end. Whether or not that is Brock Bowers remains to be seen. We'll see what happens there. Offensive line, you can always use more help on the offensive line. We'll see what they do that way. But, yeah, I could see defensive side gets addressed in free agency, whether that's safety, corner, defensive line. We just saw the linebacking news with Zaire Franklin, so that's taken care of on that part. And then Anthony Richardson's help, aside from backup quarterback, which is going to be, if Gardner Minshew moves on, that's going to be a bigger story than I think a lot of people are thinking about. Like, backup quarterback, who cares? Well, your backup quarterback played a ton last season, and that is a huge storyline, especially because you don't know the health of Anthony Richardson heading into next season and whether or not he can sustain health throughout the next season.
The backup quarterback and the backup running back conversations are conversations that nobody wants to have. No, like if you know, the powers that be here, you talk about the things that matter on the radio. Those two would not, you would imagine. By the way, I got something in my throat. You
do.
need to save that. I don't know what's going on. Here, hang on. Let me hack up for you.
No, I would agree with you that the backup quarterback is a conversation that's not the most exciting, but for the Colts situation, considering last season, it was more than a factor. I mean,
Anthony Richardson most likely is not playing 17 games.
No.
And Jonathan Taylor, or almost any running back, is not playing 17 games. You know, Zach Moss was valuable last year for the Colts. So
that running back market, by the way, in free agency is fascinating because you've got the likes of Saquon Barkley, you've got Derrick Henry out there, you've got Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs. There's going to be some guys that are going to get money that might be backup quarterbacks or change of pace guys.
I don't know. It's even coming out. The Chargers are going to move on from a lot of guys. I mean, they're going to move on from Bosa, potentially Keenan Allen would be a name.
Well, you bring in Jim Harbaugh, you expect he's going to reshape the roster.
Well,
however
I mean, you have to. Again, they've had these guys and they've been bad.
Yeah.
So to just bring them all back and just to rewind things would make no sense. But backup quarterback and backup running back, again, they're things that, you know, when we sit here and we got 5 or 6 of the main things you want to talk about, those aren't the sexy conversations.
No.
But Zach Moss was really valuable to this team. When you had the injury/contract stuff with Jonathan Taylor at the beginning of the season, Zach Moss, you know, at one point through like 6, 7, 8 weeks was one of the top leading rushers in the entire NFL. And then, you know, I mean, you had again injury issues later on with the hand, wrist, whatever it was with Jonathan Taylor. So we'll keep you abreast of everything that's happened there. Again, Russell Wilson going to the Steelers does very little for me. But again, if you're Mike Tomlin, you always are like, okay, we're going to be above 500. And so 9-8 is going to put you right around the playoffs. You know, he's probably thinking, hey, if I can just get a little bit better quarterback play, suddenly now we have even a higher ceiling. Maybe we're a 10-win team. We'll see.
Let's not kid ourselves. That Denver picking up $38 million, that contract, that helps a lot.
That's the only reason.
Yeah,
no, you're getting him for 1.8 or whatever it was. You're getting him for very little. You know, something else I wanted to bring up, and I meant to do this earlier in the show. And again, we'll have time for all of this. It's a Reaction Monday here. I wanted to ask you this, and I'm interested, and this is no offense to you, Mark, I'm interested what Bowen thinks about this. And hopefully we have Rick Carlisle on tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and we can ask him. And I know Dustin DePirac wrote about this as well in the Star. I'm pretty sure it was him that wrote about this in the Star over the weekend. And that is, you know, Benedict Mathurin of the Pacers. You know, Mathurin goes down with that injury. And it came out, what was it, Saturday, right? It came out Saturday. So after all of our shows were done, it comes out Saturday that, initially Matherin was going to miss 4 games with that shoulder injury, and then he was going to be reevaluated. So when you hear that, you automatically think, okay, he'll be gone 5 games, he'll be gone 4 games, probably throw another game or 2 on there, so maybe it's 5, 6, 7. And then you got to kind of work him back into things, and maybe instead of playing him over 20 minutes a game, it's, you play him 8 minutes here, you play him 14 minutes, you ramp him up a little bit. So to me, I looked at that and said, okay, he's going to miss 4. It's almost like an 8 to 10 game injury, right? Before you're going to be expecting to get Matherin back. And, we kind of forgot about it. And I've been trying to gauge how big of a deal people think this is. And I listen, for the season, make no mistake about it, we have found out that the Pacers are not going to go deep into this postseason.
Doesn't seem that way.
I mean, even with Matherin, it didn't feel like that. Now, with Matherin, you have even a better chance of getting one of those top 6 seeds. You wake up this morning, you're the 7, right?
Yep.
You did have Philly win, but they beat New York, so all of that is, it's kind of the yin to the yang. It's good and it's also bad. And you had the Heat lose, so you moved up beyond them. The Heat lost at home to Washington, to the damn Wizards. And so I wanted to bring this up with you, that how would we grade this vital year for Benedict Matherin in his maturation and him taking the next step? And Mark, I'm struggling with it because I think a bunch of these things can be true. Number one, Benedict Matherin, while a good player this year, did not emerge as a starter for this team.
No, I think a lot of us thought that was going to be the case.
And that it needs to be said that when we started this conversation, at the beginning of the year, didn't we all kind of think that eventually he would work himself into that? That's not an unfair thing to say. That's not in my opinion, a revisionist thing to say. I think we all walked into the season saying, hey, at some point here, it's going to be Matherin's. And then when Buddy Hield gets traded and you really don't get, I say anything back, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Doug McDermott comes back, and they're not the same positions. But Doug McDermott, I forgot he was even on the roster.
Yeah.
That's where we are with Dougie Mack right now. That there was not like you got rid of a guy, but you brought somebody in, so it always put somebody ahead of Matherin. Well, the 2 guys that were kind of ahead of Matherin, Brown and Hield, are both gone.
Right.
And Matherin still wasn't the starter there. So that's number one, where I think some people say, hey, it's not an A, it's not a B, maybe it's a C. The flip side of that, and Carlisle has told us this, and he'll probably tell us tomorrow, Mark, is Matherin, a young player, was figuring out how to work in an actual system. And that means on both sides of the floor, right? Like, he was trying to figure out that this is not just give me the damn ball and get out of the way, that there's more to it than that. And I believe that has a ton of validity as well, that Matherin was maturing in a system to where he was learning what it meant to be in an offensive system and to be a two-way player and to play well on the defensive end. So I am very torn here as he is now out for the year. The one thing we can argue about, the grade you would give it. We can argue about him being a starter, him not being a starter, him learning the system, him not learn. All of that is out there. But if this team ends up in an actual, especially if they end up in an actual playoff series, whether that's Boston, regardless of who it is, okay, and they end up in a first-round series in the playoffs, I mentioned this earlier, that it has a small amount of vibes, does it not, of Anthony Richardson? That you wanted Anthony Richardson to get all those valuable snaps. And while Matherin has got a ton of valuable playing time this year, he's not going to get that playoff playing time. And that is... that's kind of a stinker at the end of the year as well. So I'm interested now that, I hate to say it, that now we're at the end of Matherin's year, how people feel about the step that he took. He took a step Was it as big of a step as you were hoping? Was it a step that means next year he needs to be a starter? I don't know if I feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't.
As I think heading into this season, you had him penciled in as, okay, maybe he can start a few games. But I think at the end of the season, you're like, yes, we can write in permanent ink that he is a starter on the roster. I don't know if we can say that just yet. We like you said, they've lost Hield, they've lost Brown, and he still didn't make that step. And there was times where in games he would not show up. He'd completely disappear, and you wouldn't see him or anything. Rick Carlisle had very high praise for him after the injury, the season-ending injury news. He said he's one of the future pillars of this franchise. Not even any question about it. He's one of our top players and one of the hardest workers I've ever been around. There's no denying that he's got the attitude, he's got the energy, he's got the talent to be a starter in this league. It's just a matter of, can he put it all together and get on the court for long periods of time? And you're asking for a grade. Maybe incomplete is the grade you have to go with, because while you saw some progress, you also didn't see enough progress to where he can move up to that next level where you can put him in Penn as a starter next season.
I mean, a lot has been made of him, and I'm not even saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
A lot has been made of him being a foundational piece. I agree. We would all agree with that.
Yeah.
The way that where he was drafted, what we think he could be, and I would say even more than flashes, the play that he has had and the rhetoric, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the rhetoric has been that he is a pillar of who we are in the next version of the Pacers. But it's not only the rhetoric, it's the action itself. If they were going to make another big-time move in any way, you're going to have to put either Mathurin or Jarris Walker in it. I mean, you've already moved all the picks that you can move to go get a guy like Pascal Siakam. Again, I'm fine with that. I'm not giving you much kickback on it because I'm like, okay, late round, first round pick, or I get Pascal Siakam. I know which one I'm going to end up taking. It's a lot like L'Jarius Sneed in the Colts. If you said, well, Ballard's going to have to give up a second-round pick to get L'Jarius Sneed, great. So you know who you guys are second-round pick? One of the top 3-4 corners in the entire NFL. I think I'll trade off getting another offensive lineman or another fill-in-the-blank of a guy that I don't know can play compared to a guy that I know. Again, I only bring it up because, next year, the next 2 years, the club's going to exercise the option on him. And so he's going to be around. But then in 2026, he does become a restricted free agent. And so my point is, at some point, there's going to be the drop-dead date of, is he a starter or not? Is he a pillar of what you're trying to do or not? And they still have some time there. But I really think, if we're being honest, I think people thought, if you'd have told me Bruce Brown's being moved, and Buddy Hield's being moved, and one of the guys you brought back in Doug McDermott, just fill in the blank, one of the guys you brought back as a wing player was going to be injured, and Benedict Mathurin was still going to be a bench player, that would have been surprising to everybody 3 months ago.
I would totally agree. You would assume that he would just step into that role and flawlessly, but okay, now is his time. Now is his time to step up and take that starter role and run with it, and he's locked in for the next however many years. And we never really saw that. Like I said, there was games where he just completely didn't show up, and you'd see the stat line, you're like, wait, he played how many minutes, and he had that little production? What happened there? And then be other times where he showed out. He had a great showing at the All-Star game and everything like that. You're like, Nat Mathurin is what we need more. When he's talking junk to everybody in the Rising Stars game and all that.
He had 19 points in his last game of this season.
Yeah, I mean, that's production you would like to see on a consistent basis, and we haven't seen it yet. So now it's, like I said, I'm grading it as an incomplete, where you saw strides, but you didn't see enough strides in that direction.
I think we mostly agree. The other thing before we get to our morning check down here, and we got to get to goats of the weekend as well, is this. So, and I don't have the sound, but Mike Woodson yesterday, they have senior day there at IU, and they beat Michigan State. And listen, I think Mike Woodson is whatever at IU. I don't think he's done a bad job. I don't think he's done a great job. I think it's somewhere kind of in the middle. C's get degrees, something like that. I mean, we could, I'd probably give him like a C+ right now. He did turn things around. He got the most out of TJD. He did make the tournament a couple times. He beat, Kent State and Wyoming, but he did do something in March, okay? He did beat Purdue twice last year. So for me to sit here and just dump on him would be wrong. But Mike Woodson, so he said it 3 different times. Doyle wrote about this in the Star. So 3 different times on the microphone, Mike Woodson is referring to, our real fans at IU. And it is, to me, if I'm, what Mike Woodson, how he has reacted. In fact, Nathaniel, can you go ahead and pull up clip 9, the Mike Woodson? Here's Mike Woodson yesterday. This is with the question, was asked yet again kind of about his job and how he's dealt with winning while your job is being questioned. Take a listen.
Yeah, Coach, last week you had the news about your job and recruiting, and then meanwhile you guys are on a 4-game winning streak and look like an NCAA team. What's it been like for you personally to kind of manage through those 2 different things going on at the same time?
Should never be any questions about my job based on what I've done here since I've stepped foot in Indiana as a coach. So I'm not even going to entertain, questions about it because shouldn't be anything out there floating around about my job. I've done my job, and I'm going to continue to do it.
So I've done my job. If you couldn't hear it there, I've done my job. I'm going to continue to do it. The same rhetoric that we've had the last week, Mark, of I shouldn't be asked about my job.
He's very salty whenever his job comes up.
Well, to me, he is either out of his mind or this is what Indiana thinks. So Hoosier fans may not like it, but, whether I know the Quinn Buckner stuff always comes up when we have this conversation, but to me, he is either deflecting, or I think there's 3 things. Number 1, he's either deflecting. Number 2, he's oblivious, which he could be, okay? Or number 3, that's what's coming from the head of IU.
You're our guy, Mike.
You're the guy. Of course, we're not getting rid of you. Now, let me just go back for a second. What confuses this conversation, and this is where I will back Mike Woodson, the conversation from IU fans became ridiculous. And thank God, I think it was Greg Doyle. Thank God he wrote about it. The Bruce Pearl conversation was ridiculous. For 48 hours, the IU fan that was talking about Bruce Pearl was asinine. That's my belief. I never believed that Bruce Pearl was ever going to leave Auburn and they were going to do all the buyout stuff to buy out Woody, to buy out his staff, and then to also go ahead and bring in the buyout, and then you got to pay all these guys. After you buy everybody out, Mark, then you got to go pay these guys and their staff. Not to mention, Bruce Pearl is setting up his son to be the next head coach at Auburn, Stephen Pearl. Remember him? He played at Tennessee.
Nepotism at its finest.
Yeah, these are all of my beliefs. So the thought of Bruce Pearl, at one point in time, maybe it made a ton of sense. That, to me, 2024, it didn't make a lot of sense. The other thing was, y'all gave a bum like Archie Miller 4 years. And I heard Jake and Jimmy talk about this, and Eddie, and they're right. It's like the precedent is, look at what you did, and you did this with Archie Miller, who's not one of your guys and who was a bum. I mean, Archie Miller was bad for IU in every respect, other than he got Romeo Langford, and then they just missed a bunch of threes with Romeo Langford, okay?
Yeah.
And so I look at this entire Indiana thing. I thought the conversation got so far out of hand social media-wise that I thought IU fans convinced themselves that they were going to get another coach. And that's why Scott Dolson came out and whoever, leaked everything to all the media, local and national media sources, Mark, that, no, Woody's going to be brought back. But
he's back and we lost our 5-star recruit.
Here's what, and I've said this with KB, what has to scare the hell out of you is the arrogance from Mike Woodson. When you start doing the true fan thing, boy, you are going down a dangerous road. IU fans have dealt with mediocre seasons, and they have dealt with a lot of them over how many years? And pick whatever time frame you want to go with.
Pick
with
IU
the
sport
end of Green and all of this. And to think that Mike Woodson as well, that he believes that he has accomplished something that's great and grand. He has accomplished something. He took over the end of Archie, and he made it at least into an NCAA tournament team. And then in year 2, he made it a tournament team again, didn't do much. He beat Purdue twice, and a guy like TJD, I felt like got better, did he not? He brought in a one-and-done with Jalen Hood-Schifino at point guard. So I'm not acting like Woody has done nothing. But Mike Woodson feels that he has done more than what he actually has done. And when you start having that as a conversation, and then you add on top of it the true fan thing that you don't mind saying on the microphone on senior day in front of 15,000 plus people at Assembly Hall that's going to be taken nationally, and then you scoff at the questionnaire every single time you're asked about this, and you sound like we're the idiots, not you who has 0 recruits for this coming season, not you who is going to be playing in the NIT this year, unless they got on a roll, which would be all sorts of funny if they got on some sort of magical roll here. I mean, the thing I thought about, I need to look at, could IU and Purdue, where would they meet? Would that be the final? We need to look that up.
No, I think that'd be at like a bar in Bloomington.
Well, no, I'm saying, if IU needed to, could they play in the final where Purdue beat IU to keep them out of the tournament? I need to look that up, but it feels like there is a sense here of arrogance. And, well, of course, even when before they'd won 4 straight, Mike Woodson dismissal of his job performance, not even him keeping the job, Mark, but his performance this year is, to me, that's a dangerous thing because, again, it's either who he is, he's either living in La La Land, both of those, probably could be true, or it's the way that IU thinks that, of course, there's nothing wrong with what is going on here. And last thing I'll say on this, there are too many rumors of him being lazy in recruiting.
Yeah.
And that goes back to arrogance for what your name means. Louisville's dealt with it with Kenny Payne. His assistants have brought in players. Kenny Payne doesn't get it done, and it's why he's won 12 games in 2 seasons. And those two are starting to mirror each other more than I ever thought they would. Woody's going to have to bring in 6-7 guys out of the portal because you're not selling me Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. We're not. I'll put it this way. Trey Galloway should not start next year for IU. If he does,
he shouldn't, but he probably will.
If Trey Galloway is starting next year at the beginning of the season, and that's the plan, that he's the off guard and Trey Galloway's the starter, then your team's not good enough, in my opinion, to make any sort of a run in the Big Ten that's going to mean anything.
Well, Woody thinks he's pretty great. He thinks he's been the missing piece that they've been missing all season. That's the reason why they're off to the start they have. Maybe he also just forgets what his resume is. He's got that. Maybe they give him the fake resume and stuff. So look how good you're doing. Look at that bloated resume. So he's going to that every time anybody asks him about his job qualifications. He's like, actually, look at this. I have way more Final Four appearances than you know I have. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? He's all over the board.
There's something about Woody's being combative, but it's not like I think he's combative and he's backing himself. I think Woody is, I think there is a sense of arrogance.
Yeah. No,
there.
that's without question.
And I don't know if it's just him or it's what he's getting from IU that, hey, of course you're the guy. We would never have that sort of discussion. Regardless, what he's done and what I love about it is his combativeness or arrogance, his true fan rhetoric that he used yesterday. It's drawn a line in the sand.
That's a dangerous game to play.
It's drawn the line in the sand that, Woody, if you end up not making the tournament this year, this offseason and next year is going to be it for you. I mean, when I say it for you, it's going to be whether you chose to be like this and it paid off, or you chose to be like this and it didn't pay off. Yeah. And we're talking about a new coach as well. All right, you ready to do it, Nathaniel? Quick morning check down here on the Wake Up Call. Give me the open.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. March starts here at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, March 11th and 12th.
All right, Pacers winners yesterday. Boy, I tell you what, going on the road and getting that win in Orlando, 111-97. It's the second lowest output, I think, for the Magic the entire season. Post-game, Rick Carlisle, head coach, all these big games now as they head into middle March.
Look, these are all playoff games. You need your best competitors in the game as early as possible. And, as much as it's important to watch everyone's minutes that they don't go crazy. I mean, TJ only played 11 minutes the other night against Minnesota, and we needed him tonight. And actually, truthfully, it was hard getting him out of the game. He was playing so well. So I'm a big believer in involving the bench early, and we needed everyone tonight.
Yeah, they did. And again, you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys scoring in double figures. McConnell was great. Toppin was great. I've seen a couple different numbers out there. I think Toppin and Siakam playing those guys together, when you don't have Turner on the floor, I think that's a fun, interesting type lineup with those guys at the 4 and 5. So we'll see. Coming up tomorrow, Pacers back in action in OKC. Our coverage here on The Fan beginning at 7:30.
Yeah, and a much needed win also because obviously we talked about it all show. Benedict Mathurin season-ending labrum surgery on his right shoulder, not good. And like you said, they play the Thunder. That schedule for the Pacers does not lighten up whatsoever. The Thunder are very good. Another just brutal team on this.
You get the Bulls, you get the Cavs, at Warriors, at Lakers, at Clippers. Still, the only good thing is you do get Bulls, Hawks, and a couple and 3 games with the Nets. So while yes, it's not all good. It's also, you do get some lower teams there. You get the Nets 3 times.
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
we've seen how the Pacers handle those lower teams.
Beat the damn Nets
too.
3 times.
So we'll see. Yeah, college hoops, we had Zach Edey go to the rafters with his jersey retirement. 78-70 win over Wisconsin. Zach Edey had a Zach Edey-like performance, 25 points, 14 rebounds. They now await the Big Ten tournament. For Indiana, they got a much-needed 65-64 win over Michigan State. They'll take on the winner of Michigan-Penn State on Thursday. And Indiana State, we are on different sides of the fence there. Andy doesn't think they're going to make the tournament. They lost to Drake, but I think they still find a way, damn it. They still find a way on Selection Sunday for the Sycamores to get their
You're making me the bad guy.
I
Nathaniel,
am.
this is what
I don't want to get the hate text from JMV.
I'm going to be the bad guy. Well, listen, win the damn game. How about this? If Indiana State wants to make the NCAA tournament, beat Drake on Sunday.
Well, they didn't.
Don't be 1-2 against Drake. I don't know what to tell you. Those are 2 quad 1 wins they could have had on their resume.
That's true. They could have. They didn't get it, unfortunately. But and then on the racetrack, we had this IndyCar season opener. Joseph Newgarden dominated, led 92 of 100 laps, beat second-place finisher Pato O'Ward by almost 8 seconds. Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, and Colton Herta rounded out the top 5 IndyCar.
I need to start betting on these, too.
Good luck.
You bet on IndyCar?
If you can find it on the betting sites, good luck to you, because it doesn't seem like it pops up unless it's the Indy 500. IndyCar back on track in 2 Sundays from now. The Thermal $1 million challenge in California. So like you said, trading the coast of St. Pete for California. Not too shabby.
Yeah.
Not too shabby,
Good
I would
for
say.
You, Jake.
Yeah. And then the other big news for the Colts.
40 degrees and raining here in 2 weeks.
We actually got breaking Colts news over the show. That's very rare to have, but we had it. The Colts locked up Zaire Franklin, 3-year, $31 million contract extension for him. Great job there. Win-win for both sides, I'd say, in that deal. And then, of course, the illegal tampering period of the NFL starts at noon today, and I'm sure we'll get some juicy data coming out of there. But you got to make sure you're following the right accounts. Make sure you got Adam Schefter. Make sure you got Ian Rappaport and those other guys. Make sure it's the correct accounts you're following.
Oh, I mean, I know, but it would be funny if someone got around here, though, too.
Oh, I'm sure it'll
always
happen.
Fun.
It'll
I
happen
got no
at some
problem
point.
with it. Yeah, Franklin, good for him. He gets some generational money, if you will. He's already making, $2-3 million a year, but now that's going to be upped. We'll see what else the Colts do. We're talking some Horizon League, right? That's a 9:40. That's coming up next, right?
Well, should we do the quick pop quiz? Should we get that through there, or do you want to?
And I haven't seen one. Did Scotty send one?
He sent one.
Oh, did he?
He's out last week. He sent one this week, so it's not substitute teacher day. We can do that, or we can talk a little goats of the week, whatever you want to do on the other side.
Well, she's at 9:40, Julie Rolock, right? She's at 9:40, so we'll talk with her. We'll probably do goats of the weekend, and we'll get you out of here on this Monday. All right, 30 minutes ago, hanging out with you until 10 o'clock here on The Fan.
March starts here. The Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships with NCAA tournament bids on the line March 11th and 12th. Tickets and more at horizonleague.com/Indy.
Make the hiring process work for you. With Indeed's end-to-end hiring solution, you can attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. Start at Indeed.com/credit.
Hey guys, looking for a reason to spend 3 days on the couch watching basketball?
Studios. KB and Andy, Mark Dykton hanging in with us today. KB is in Chattanooga, we believe. And maybe he is. I don't know. We had no contact with our guy all weekend.
Eat some saltwater taffy,
so
I think.
We have no idea.
Maybe at Dollywood. Who knows?
He put a penny in one of those machines where it squishes the penny, but you got to pay $2 or whatever it is. So he'll be back in the saddle tomorrow. Again, we'll probably be reacting to a tons of Colts conversation here. Free agency, the legal tamping period. We got it going. That's what's popping here on the NFL front. All right, let's talk some college basketball. Let's talk some Horizon League. Played right down the street from us here in Indianapolis. Horizon League Commissioner Julie Rolock joins us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Julie, good morning. I remember talking to you before the season. We were kind of getting pumped up for this time for March Madness, and March Madness is here. The men's and women's side, you guys have been busy this weekend. A good morning to you. How are you?
I'm terrific. Good morning to you. March definitely starts here. We're ready to go.
Yeah, I know. And you guys having the showcase tonight, at least I know on the men's side, being on ESPN2 is always a great thing. Cleveland State and Oakland at 7 o'clock, Milwaukee and Northern Kentucky at 9:30. The women playing as well. Whether it be the women's side or the men's side, Julie, what has stood out and what has been, I guess, the reaction here at your tournament this weekend?
Yeah, it has been a fun weekend. Most of the teams got to town Saturday, and then I had a chance to watch all 8 teams practice yesterday. It's exciting because on the women's side here, tipping at noon, we've got Cleveland State bringing the Player of the Year. They're our regular season champ, but Colby Maples is fun to watch. Newcomer of the Year, Michaela Purdue. Just some strong talent. And then Green Bay's tipping off at 2:30, and they had 2 top 25 wins, ranked in the top 50 throughout the season. So really strong on the women's side. And then on the men, you noted we're going to be on ESPN Linear tonight, but Oakland coming in here as the clear regular season champ with Player of the Year on that side, Trey Townsend. They're a fun team to watch. They're big. They play fast. They play hard. And then you've got, I can keep going if you want, but there's going to be some high-level basketball, and it's just really fun to watch these student athletes get after it.
Horizon League Commissioner Julie Rolock joining us on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Julie, the men's side has been filled with all sorts of upsets. The women's side has been chalk. The top 4 seeds making it to tonight's semifinal. What do you prefer? Do you prefer chalk, where a lot of the top-seeded teams make it, or do you like the upsets, where the underdogs can pull off the upsets? What do you prefer?
Well, I'm going to give you the diplomatic commissioner answer, right?
Yeah.
I like a little of both. I think on the women's side, our clear top 4 teams prevailed, and they're here. As you said, it's chalk. But on the men's side, we had 8 strong teams. We were deep this year. So while it looks like there were upsets, the Wright State Northern Kentucky game, that went to overtime, and the final score was 99-97. So that 4-5 game was pretty tight, but Cleveland State with Tristan Enaruna, he's a first-team All-Leaguer. While they upset Youngstown, it wasn't that much of an upset when you see how they're really performing. And then Milwaukee, boy, they're explosive. B.J. Freeman can drop over 30 points any night, and they're probably peaking right now. They're also the healthiest they've been. So I think that we've got the right teams here at the right time. How's that?
That's a great answer. That's a very commissioner answer of you. I really appreciate that one. All games, by the way, tonight or all today into the evening at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum. Folks who want to check it out, I'm going to bring the family. We're going to swing by later after the kids got out of school.
Are the Dykton's going?
We are going. We're going to be loud and proud.
Fantastic.
Well, Julie, Mark's working on no sleep, so I was wondering if he was going to go home and try to take a nap or not. You're going to go watch some basketball? Look at you.
I love it. I'm on no sleep too, so Mark, I'll give you some coffee when I see you.
Please send a pot to my section. I'll be over there.
Will do.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you, so if people want to check it out today at the Indiana Farmers Coliseum, where can they find tickets and more information to bring the family down?
Yeah, everything they need to know is at horizonleague.com/Indy. And since you noted you're bringing your family, I'll tell you, we've got the Vallejo Fan Zone. It's just across literally the walkway from the Farmers Coliseum. We have really amped that up this year. My kids are coming. We've got their friends coming. There's a lot going on in the fan zone, so make sure you pop in there. It's open in between sessions and games, and there's some fun activities in there. There's a 360 mirror, first time I've ever done that, but it's some sort of camera activation that, of course, everybody likes in this era of selfies.
Yeah, there's a fan zone too, correct? That everybody can check out as well. I think my daughter's going to hang out with
selfie zone. You go in the selfie
Oh,
zone.
I did selfie zone at the daddy-daughter dance over the weekend, so I'm already a crafted veteran.
Julie Rolash with us here, Horizon League commissioner on the Payless Liquors hotline. You know, Julie, I just wonder, we have followed this. It's not your conference, but we have followed this with Indiana State. And you guys know in the mid-major world, it's a lot of times just one and you're in, right? So the regular season, it doesn't always matter what happens in the regular season. It's about what's going on right now, the men's and women's side. When you get a situation, though, where you have a couple teams that have some metrics and really feel like, hey, we are deserving of being an at-large team in the NCAA. I don't know, as a conference commissioner, how do you go about lifting those teams up to try to get more than, just one team in the tournament? Have you dealt with that before, and what would you do if you had to deal with that?
Yeah, well, we're dealing with that right now on the women's side. We've got Cleveland State and Green Bay are both at-large contenders. Each conference meets with our committee reps. So I have 2 members from the women's basketball committee, 2 members from the men's committee. We get on a Zoom every month and talk through our top teams. Are there any injuries? Were there some losses that there's a backstory we need to explain? Any key wins we want to point out? And then where are they in the net? Where are they in bubble consideration? So that's a very active dialogue, and I would say it turns into more advocacy. I mean, you got to be credible, obviously, but
right.
We even talk seed path, and we tell them, hey, like if on the men's side, if our 1 seed wins, this is where we think they're projected to be. If it's the 2 seed, 3 seed, this is where we see them. And we do the same thing on the women's. Now, they might not always agree, but I appreciate the candid conversation that's a lot of science with some art mixed in as well, because obviously there is the eye test. And I think in our league, because there's so much parity and depth, especially on the men's side, the record can be deceiving relative to the strength of the team.
Yeah, it's just, it's a difficult situation. I know sometimes you have to be, for lack of a better term, you have to be a cheerleader, right, for your own conference. Yeah, you are anyway, but you have to say, hey, committee, there's something else going on here that's not the Big Ten, the ACC, whatever it may be, the Big East.
Exactly, and that's where, the non-league, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the non-league scheduling strategy,
sure.
And some leagues are a little stronger with regulating it than others. I'd say we're on the stronger side in terms of expectations, because you got to prove yourself in the non-league in some instances to show, we've played these Power 5 teams and we hung in there with them. So, and in some cases, like on the Green Bay women's side, they got 2 top 25 wins. Well, that's a really strong team sheet, as they call it, when the committee's sitting down to put the bracket together. So you got to advocate, to your point, or cheerlead. And you got to do it with some level of credibility so that the committee then can hopefully take that into the room and be your advocate.
Horizon League Commissioner Julie Rolash with us here, Payless Liquors Hotline. Again, if you want to find out all the happenings with the Horizon League in town, horizonleague.com/Indy. They have everything from tickets to merchandise. You mentioned the fan zone and also things to do around the city of Indianapolis. I saw you had a couple breweries on there, which is right up my alley. Again, horizonleague.com/Indy. The women in action, the semis at noon and 2:30 today, with the championship coming up on Tuesday. And then on the men's side, 7 o'clock, 9:30, the championship Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Well, Julie, appreciate the time. Enjoy everything happening here in Indy this weekend. Good luck, and hopefully we see a bunch of teams, more than one team, in the NCAA tournament, whether that be on the men's side or the women's side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Little Horizon League conversation. Now, you're going down there today?
Yeah, going to bring
Look
the
at
family
you.
on once the oldest gets done with school. I think we'll swing down there. Definitely don't think we're going to make it through the 9:30 game, but we can definitely check out Oakland, Cleveland State. That's at 7.
I don't think you're going to.
No.
That
Might
should
catch
be a
the
big
tail
game.
end of Green Bay, Purdue,
Oakland's
Fort
good.
Wayne. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
9:30, bit late on a school night for me.
Yeah, probably. And you're going to bed early tonight. I can tell you're going to bed early
There's a nap
tonight.
in my future for sure.
We'll wrap things up. Go to the weekend next.
Hi, this is ESPN's Mike Greenberg and ESPN.
And I thought this might be right. What'd you say, Nathaniel? 74%? 74% of the betting public was on Purdue minus the 9 yesterday.
Woof.
That last play of the game, it helped some people. It helped the 26%. It screwed over everybody else. Oh, that's fantastic. Appreciate Julie Rolash joining us. Horizon League in town again. HorizonLeague.com/Indy. If you want any of the information, semifinals, men's and women's today, finals, men's and women's tomorrow. Check your local listings for that. And appreciate Nate Atkins joining as well. KB back in the saddle tomorrow. You ready to do you have your goats of the weekend, Mark?
Fly through this thing.
All right, let's hit the open. Let's get goats of the weekend.
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good!
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
All right. I know we got to be quick. I'll give you both of mine. My good goat of the weekend, Matt Painter, saying, hey, here you go, Zach Edey. We're putting 15 in the rafters. I love that move. Absolutely loved it. And my other goat of the weekend on the bad side, Tom Izzo.
Cool.
What's happened to Tom Izzo this year? Ugh.
I know. My good goats, Zach Edey and Caitlin Clark, both had great performances to close out.
Oh, she was great,
their regular
wasn't she?
They won again. College career. Caitlin Clark, did Caitlin Clark things in the Big Ten Championship. Zach Edey going up in the rafters did a Zach Edey-like performance. Very good there. My bad has to be Benedict Mathurin out for the season. That was just a punch to the gut over the weekend. Torn labrum in this right shoulder, out for the season. Sucks for him. Sucks for the Pacers. Sucks for the fans. The road for the Pacers gets a lot tougher because now they have to rely on a bench that has been very inconsistent
to
the rest of the way. So we'll see what happens there. That was my good and bad goats of the week.
Nathaniel, I have no clock in front of me. Do I just need to get out here wherever?
We got 15 seconds.
Oh, okay, there we go. Well, we have no clock in front of us.
So Colts locked up.
Give a hand signal.
Colts locked up Zaire Franklin, 3-year deal. Again, legal tampering in the NFL starts at noon. We're already seeing that happen as well. Andy, it's been a pleasure.
It has. You go get some sleep. Back at it tomorrow. KB will be back. Have a good day. Jimmy and Jake coming your way at noon. JMV at 3.
JMV, from Moyer Fine Jewelers for over 40 years. Moyer.